Grinders, 9:30 on the East Coast, 6:30 out there on the West Coast. Good morning, West Coast. 3.5 hours of nonstop NFL DFS conversation. It starts right now, taking y'all all the way up the lock, all the way up to kickoff, 1 o'clock on the East Coast, an 11-game slate. There's no game going on during the show. Still 4 buys out there. This is when the true grinders kick up their game for sure. We're in the back half as far as the season. Myself, Bobby Gomes, TastefulTides. Bobby, before we fully get going and dive in, I must ask you a question. How was your back, Bobby? You threw your back out yesterday like an old man, jumping on trampolines. How are you feeling?
It was actually last week, and then I re-aggravated it yesterday, where my girlfriend decided to get us a year Sky Zone pass for my child, and I'm trying to basically get involved in doing the Sky Zone trampoline stuff, like be there, play with them, stuff like that. And yeah, it was rough. I didn't know I jumped up and then I tried to jump up again and my knees buckled, and someone sent me a GIF and it kind of looked like the GIF, like my knee buckled. I went down and then I ended up in the foam pit, like next to it was rough, but it's not that bad. I'll manage, but yeah.
But are you about pot committed just to get your money's worth? You got to go back here like every week just to kind of justify the year pass? How does that work?
Well, yeah, it's like there's not much the issue is like it's the winter time in Mass, so you kind of have to do like a lot of indoor stuff, right?
Sure.
So we'll be there. Yeah.
You're gonna be in the sidelines more often than not now. Is that the plan going forward?
Next week, I'm not getting on the trampoline. Like I already told, there's no way because it's like 2 weeks in a row. Yeah, there's not a chance I'm jumping on a trampoline. At least
you're out with a back. You're out with a back. Unless you're doubtful.
I told her to get me a chair too. This gave me an excuse. So my Christmas gift's going to be a new like gamer chair, because the chair that I have is just not comfortable for this situation at all.
Are you a gamer? Or you're just by your computer a lot, and those are comfortable chairs?
Yeah, that's pretty much it, right? Like I don't know. There's like some crossover between DFS and gaming, I would say. Correct?
I would think so. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of. You could say it's kind of, I don't want to say nerdy as an insult, but there's kind of like the numbers and math and games. There's a Venn diagram for sure. We got Tim, TastefulTides. Tim, we're going to be doing a quick peek here as far as a cash game build, a cash game shell, not the full. We're not going to give everything to the people. Obviously, we'll give them enough. We're going to have the conversation. Tim, welcome. You've never been. You wouldn't jump on you know better at this point in time. You're not jumping on trampolines anymore. You've retired, right? Your jersey's hanging up in the rafters somewhere.
Well, yeah. So my daughter is 13, so we did that about 10 years ago. So yeah, I did used to partake in that, but yeah, those days are long over for me, thankfully.
Shout out to the chat. Shout out to KC, who's in the West Coast, waking up with us 6:30 in the morning. Now, I guess that's normal for some people, probably you guys, but for me, like waking up at 6:30 seems outrageous. But yeah, Tim, you wake up, that's like on the reg, right? 6:30, 7 o'clock sometimes?
Yeah, we had an NHL game at 8 o'clock this morning because they're playing in Sweden, so I had to cover that for projections. So yeah, but yeah, I'm up that early anyway.
Detroit's out there, right? Is there 4 teams or 2 teams?
Yeah, there's like a few teams out there right now. Today it was Minnesota, Toronto.
Okay, there you go. Oh, so it must be like 6 or 8 teams or something like that. Yeah, I saw different teams out there at different times, so I couldn't quite figure out what's going on. Tim, I believe we gave producer Steve enough time to get a kind of our shell lineup built as far as cash. Do you want to give like an overview on the slate before we kind of dive in? I kind of mentioned the injury report. I don't really think we're waiting for anything. Basically, all the news is out there. Maybe Tyler Lockett. That's probably the big one. If Tyler Lockett's going to play, he wasn't practicing. He's currently questionable. Achan officially in. We did see the report just came through, like he's expected to have like normal amount of reps. I know Keenan Allen didn't practice necessarily, didn't have full practices, but he's expected to go. I believe Freiermuth is expected to come back. 2.5K tight end on DK if you need it. If you're looking to stack the 33.5 total, that is Pittsburgh and Cleveland, or just have like a one-off, I suppose. Rico Dowdy maybe is interesting. Maybe Dowdle, kind of, sort of, somewhat, maybe. But just the backup.
Didn't he get Q tagged?
Yeah, that was yeah. That's we're not really sure.
Okay.
We don't know yet. The last I saw, he is questionable. So we'll know 11:30, right? If he's going to be dressing or not, or wearing a uniform. I imagine either way, he's probably going to be wearing something. Tim, what do you have as far as the screenshot on this slate before we talk about a little bit of cash? What are you seeing? No Philadelphia, no KC, no Lamar, no great tight ends, right? There's no Kelsey. Andrews is gone forever. As far as this season,
we got Josh Allen in a really bad spot. So I mean, it's like, we don't really have like the premium quarterbacks that we normally would have. I think the obvious first game that has to be discussed is Houston, Arizona, right? Like that's going to be, all week you've heard that this is an amazing game stack, amazing plays for cash games. All of this is true. I'd imagine ownership is going to be through the roof in this game. So it's really, that's going to be like this. That's going to be the spot, right? Like, like you want to be overweight, you want to be underweight. Guys like, McBride are going to be super, super chalky. Kyler Murray, I think, is going to be extremely popular. Same thing on the other side. The guys like Tank Dell, Singletary. I think CJ Stroud is going to be somewhat popular too. So like this whole game, Marquise Brown, like this whole game, just like if you rank it raw points, whether you rank it for raw points or points per dollar, it's just going to pop everywhere. So I think, finding some pivots, I think is key to large field GPPs, and also just like finding ways of getting different within that game is going to be very, very important for large field tournaments as well.
Yeah. So Noah Brown not expected to play for Arizona, so they get a little bit of, they're cheap, and we should get full usage out of guys like Rondell Moore. You mentioned Trey McBride; he's been fantastic, and the price is just not going up fast enough. The other side, Houston. Without Noah Brown, they are getting Robert Woods back, but Woods is really cheap. Dell is still too cheap, especially on DK. Collins is coming back also. They're without Pierce, so Devin Singletary is still too cheap. It's expected to be the second fastest game on the board as far as plays. Surprisingly enough, according to Derek Carty's The Blitz game level factors, number one by a tick is Pittsburgh-Cleveland, which is pretty interesting. You never really seen a game that's expected to have a ton of plays that has a total, I believe it's 33.5 last I checked, with Pittsburgh and Cleveland. We'll have that conversation with Bobby because I've seen it floated out there, and I don't think it's completely insane to play a little DTR. Yeah, 32.5. He's 4-5 on DK. But the other thing is you're talking about ownership, Tim, and a lot of people like throw their cash games lineups in tournaments, so they just tweak it just a little bit. So, and this game is going to be heavily flooded in cash as well. And that kind of leads to the conversation of our cash game build. And, you're going to have 2 or 3 Cardinals in cash, I think. And you're going to have at least 1 Texan in cash. You're basically kind of sort of building a game stack in cash to some degree. That sort of starts with if you're going to play Murray over Purdy. We sort of talked about that briefly pre-show. Looks like you're leading Murray. But yeah, talk to me about is that kind of what the start of our shell lineup is? It's kind of a little game stack of Arizona, Houston.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is, and like I think that's the way to go in cash games. It's that I don't know. I think Murray looked really good last week. I kind of like his rushing upside too. So I just, Purdy's fine. He would definitely be my second choice in cash games. But I think that I just like this game environment more. In cash games, you're really not supposed to be worried about ownership. So I think building into this game in cash is the right thing to do. But I think this is a very, very difficult week in tournaments because you really have one game that like everyone is going to be, building heavily into. So it's like finding pivots away from this game is going to be the key. But yeah, like Murray's my cash game quarterback for definitely this week.
You're on mute, Dino.
Unbelievable. I was off last week. I'm a little bit rusty. My apologies. But, Bobby, I was saying that guy on the couch analysis. I know you're the hand in the dirt guy. I'm the guy on the couch. But Murray looked healthy, right? He looked pretty good. Like there was no reason to bring him back if he wasn't fully good to go. I think it's 11 months since that ACL. Spectacular recovery. That on that game-winning drive that when he ran like 70 yards to get like 15 rushing yards, it was spectacular. I feel like Purdy might be, I don't want to say a little bit safer. He feels a little safer than Murray. But I think Murray's ceiling is a little bit higher, right? That's sort of my general thought. And Purdy and Murray, similar price. You're saving a few dollars there with Purdy on DK. You're more of the tournament guy, but like, do you have a thought between those two? And just, I think the bigger question, Bobby, you're running out some tournaments today. How do you handle that Houston-Arizona game? There are 11 games on the board. It's very possible that's not the game that goes off, right? It seems one of the more likely, sure, but you'll take the field over it. I don't know which game it's going to be, but the field somebody in the field probably beats it. What are you doing with Arizona and Houston? Because, that's what everybody's staring at. That's what optimizers are spitting out for good reason. Lots of reasons why that game is appealing, but it certainly could, whimper out. It wouldn't be a shock. So Bobby, I need your thoughts on how you're tackling Arizona, Houston. Are we over? Are we under? We've just building the game differently. What's the strategy?
Yeah, I'm definitely playing it, but I'm probably building it a little differently. I don't think I'm playing much Marquise Brown. I'm not playing much James Conner. In the context of this cash game build, I would probably prefer Kyler, I would say, but in tournaments, I think I much more prefer Purdy. The issue for me is I don't really think CMC is a cash game play for me. Like I'd much rather pay up for Tyreek. And maybe that's a bad take, but I think play a guy like Brian Robinson in there instead of CMC, or who else is someone that you can kind of consider? Aaron Jones, I think, would be someone you could consider as well.
Singletary, you got to play.
Singletary, yeah. His rushing prop is like, 10 yards more than pretty much everyone else on the slate.
It's a big number.
I really like Singletary is a very good play. But my preferred spend would be Tyreek. And McBride, I think, is a phenomenal play too. Like his usage is just increasing dramatically. I know it's a tight end, paying 4-4 for him. We've been playing him pretty much every week. It's a fantastic spot for him, though. Like it'd be really tough for me to get away from him in cash for sure. So, I think I'm going to be playing McBride. Everything looks pretty much similar. Like it's a great coverage matchup for Tank Dell in tournaments. Like I'd probably consider Nico Collins because their ownership really isn't showing what it should be. Like they should be probably split in half. No one's going to play Collins, and Collins is a phenomenal play in his own right. So maybe like flip it in tournaments. I'm definitely going to have exposure to both. Dalton Schultz is in a really good spot too. In cash, I would definitely prioritize Dell. But yeah, I'm interested in Tim's take, like with CMC, why he chose CMC over Tyreek. What was the thought process there, Tim?
Yeah, so I mean, I think you're absolutely right. If you're not going to go see, I was building two different teams before the show, and you're absolutely right. The other build I was doing was with Tyreek and going to Brian Robinson as an RB2. So I just kind of went with C-Mac. I don't know. He just does so much, and I know Tyreek does too. I'm kind of worried about blowout in the Miami game, and if it's not going to be Tyreek, then Tyreek's going to be. If Tyreek doesn't get a big portion of that blowout, that's going to be big trouble for Tyreek. Like if it ends up being Achane or Waddle or some other combination of like Tua and another wide receiver, then I think Tyreek's not going to reach salary-based expectations. That was kind of my thought process. But yeah, that was my other build, was go Tyreek instead of C-Mac and go Brian Robinson as like another mid-range running back. So I don't think you're wrong by any means. It's just that's just kind of where I was leaning. I thought C-Mac maybe had a better floor.
I agree with Bobby on this one, Tim, and I'll tell you why. And I'm not here to say you can't play CMC.
I like hearing that. I like hearing that you agree with me.
Yeah, clip that, and we'll use it as a drop going forward.
Yeah.
So, of course, CMC is spectacular, Tim. I think the argument is that running back and running back value and just running back plays you want to play is deeper today than receivers for cash, at least. Singletary, I think he's one you got to play. Robinson, the absence of Pierce, the matchup against the Giants. You could hold your nose and play Pollard. I know people don't want to do it, but you can certainly, I think you can play Pollard in cash, especially on FanDuel, where the price is even better. And touchdowns are weighted more, and theoretically, he's going to get in the end zone at some point. I know Bobby mentioned Aaron Jones. Receiver, I guess outside of that Arizona-Houston game, it falls off pretty quickly. Dell makes sense. We talked about, Tyreek versus CMC. Again, I'm not going to argue it, right? There's two passes, and they're both perfectly fine. But I think, would you agree with just the premise that the running back pool of players you want to play, this week on a given week versus typical weeks, Tim, it feels a little bit stronger, like, dollar for dollar value, however you want to phrase it. A little more, there's a few more players in that pool that I feel better about. Maybe that's just me, or is that you too?
I get what you're saying. Running back position doesn't necessarily thrill me this week. Definitely. And I'm looking at our projections, and McCaffrey has a floor that's 2 points better than Tyreek. And that's what I'm aiming for in cash games. So definitely, we're definitely splitting hairs here. They're both great. They're both great. I'm going to stick with my McCaffrey call for cash.
I ran a bunch of optimals here. I added some variants as well. I'm just trying to see what landed in what. We did get 24% CMC, and I got 50% Tariq for what it's worth. And it probably would look different. I know I was looking at the blitz earlier as well. But, I'm not going to, like you said, they're both fine. They're both spectacular. Like, I'm not going to tell you can't play CMC. By all means, you want to do that. Chat, do hit that like button. Do subscribe and turn on those notifications. Do all those things. Hit all the buttons. You know what else you should do is join the show. This is the people's show. You guys are all the people, and help steer the conversation. We're here for the next hour plus, until we hand it off to Erik Beimfohr, and I believe it's TJ Zwarych, because Squirrel Patrol is he's in Miami. He's at the King of the Beach, as well as Justin Carlucci. Good luck to both of them. Take something down today, win some money. After them, you got Kristi, you have Andre, the newly married Andre. Shout out to Andre, and as well as Brit. I believe Brit is hosting that. But we're taking you guys all the way up to 1 o'clock. Join the show. This is where we kind of dig into all sorts of things, kind of bounce around. We're doing cash game first, but wherever you want us to go, we will go there. We'll talk some ownership. We'll talk some, game theory, all the good stuff. We'll talk sims. I know Bobby's all about that sim life. This is your show. Throw some conversations throw your questions into the chat, and we'll do our best to work it in here. The rest of your cash game build, like McBride, you just have to play, right, Tim? Like some of these, this is like, it just comes preloaded for cash. It's not even like you have to play him. I don't want to say have to, but like you're supposed to. Cardi would say you're an idiot if you don't play Trey McBride in cash. I believe he did say that in the Blitz show.
Yeah, you're definitely playing McBride in cash. There's no tight end is extremely weak today. There are some viable GPP pivots, but for cash, you're 100% playing McBride.
All right. Oh, Broccoli Boy wants to talk about, like I said, it's the people's show. I know Broccoli Boy is Tim's guy, but Bobby, you hit a $500,000 chess piece there. Every Wednesday, we all go to DK and we hit show me what I want in my treasure chest. And for me, it's always like 20,000 or 10,000 or 15, whatever it is. But Bobby, I don't know what you did, but you got yourself $500K, $500,000 crowns. What do you do with those crowns? Congratulations.
Yeah, I'll be playing them when I can. Haven't really entered anything with them yet, but I'll be playing them. Sorry, I'm trying to change some projections real quick. My thought process with the crowns is just play them when you can. No real need to play them now, so just holding on to them.
My thought process is wait for Black Friday. That's what I did last year. I turned it in to I bought a bunch of Apple stuff, I believe. I think we have over 1 million crowns saved, and that's usually when they give you a discount. And also, I think there's a smart way of doing it, tax-wise, depending on how you're doing for the season as well. Tim, do you have you have a strategy with your crowns?
I pretty much never use them. I don't have a strategy. Yeah.
So wait, I know you play like every single night. I believe you're in the highest tier as well. How many crowns do you currently have? Like
Quite
5 million, 10 million?
No, not that many, but quite a few.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're gonna keep that number. We'll keep it in the DL. We don't want to throw it out there, but it's a lot. The over, I'm like over 2 million, 3 million?
It's around there.
All right. Anything else you want to say as far as cash games here? We mentioned Tank Dell, like it just seems too cheap there. That matchup in Arizona should go back and forth in a dome. Highest total on the board. How much Arizona is like too much Arizona? How many Arizona pieces are you willing to have on a given lineup, Tim? Because I don't know if I want to be too married to one team in cash, right? And like I'm looking at some of the lineups are getting spit out, and there's no correlation when it comes. It's just sort of like projection. Like I see one that has James Conner, Marquise Brown, and Trey McBride. I don't think I would do all that, especially without.
No,
there's no.
I wouldn't
Yeah,
I wouldn't do that. No. I would say 3 at the most, but I would prefer just 2. I think because
3 if you're playing Murray.
Yeah, I mean it's tough because I really like Marquise Brown. I think Rondale Moore is interesting as a punt, but I think right now locked into my completely 100% locked into my cash game right now is Murray and McBride. After that, I'm not really committed to any other Arizona piece, even though I think Marquise Brown is a fantastic play, and I think that Rondale Moore is at least worthy as a punt if you need it.
All right, Tim. Brendan's got a question in chat. This is for you, Tim. Why is Dell such a lock for cash with Collins back? You can play CMC and Tyreek if you play Woods instead. Crazy. I mean, I'll let you answer, but like Robert Woods he's just not the guy he was 4 years ago, right? He's coming back from injury, and he's the third option, maybe even the fourth option if you consider Schultz, right? So, I don't know. I'm not saying you can't play Woods, but I wouldn't. Would it surprise you if Woods had 3 catches for 40 yards today? Probably not. Just the Tank has certainly separated himself from Bobby Trees. Feel free to answer that question. I know he's cheap and he's interesting for tournaments. For cash, though, it feels a little bit shaky.
Yeah, the way I'd answer that question is I think that's a completely viable way to build a GPP team, but I know that Tank Dell is cheaper and he's projected for more raw points than Collins, and I think he's in a better matchup too. So, I think it's clear that Tank Dell is your cash game option from Houston, but that build that Brendan is describing, I think is completely fine for a GPP. I think that's a good way to build. Try to find ways to get C-Mac and Tyreek into your team. I think that's completely fine.
I want to bring Bobby in on that because I'm looking at the ownership stuff. We have a new batch of ownership that just came in. Hit the refresh button. 934 on the East Coast. It'll get more refined the closer we get to locked, more accurate. This is what we have, Bobby, as far as the flex plays on DK for Arizona Houston. This is large field tournament, by the way, ownership. So it's going to be even higher for guys like Devin Singletary. Of course, cash, he's going to be in an 80-90% of cash lineup, something silly like that. He really should be in everyone. But Bobby, we got Singletary 32%, McBride 29%, Dell 21%. Marquise Brown, 18%. Connor, 18%. Schultz, 15%. Moore, 15%. Woods, 10%. Collins, 6%. And you kind of alluded to this one. Pay more to be different. I kind of like that strategy as well when it comes to Collins. Collins is almost 1K more. He's 6'7", when compared to Dell. Dell is 5'9" on DK. And you're going to get a, 3-to-1 ownership, something like that. 21% for Dell in large field tournaments and 6% for Collins. More than 3x. I went to UCF. My math is a little bit tricky sometimes, especially this time of the day. But yeah, you sort of alluded to that, kind of flipping the idea of maybe let's get, more Collins than we're talking about than Dell, and just hopefully Dell doesn't fully break the slate like he has done at least once, possibly twice this year. Is that one thing you're considering? I'm trying to think if there's anybody else. Schultz at 15%. Yeah, it's just this whole game is going to be pretty popular, and again, for good reason. But is that one strategy that you're kind of honing in on? And what are your thoughts as far as Woods?
No interest in Woods. I think they're a lot better. I just think at this point, don't be playing Robert Woods. Just not much of a ceiling. But yeah, I'm with you. Getting over on Nico, paying up to be a little bit contrarian. I'm still obviously playing Dell. He's probably the best projected wide receiver play on the slate. Schultz's matchup is phenomenal. Like those guys are they're good plays. Like we already hit on that. The plays that I have questions with is like Marquise Brown. I had preferred Wilson to Brown originally as my Arizona wide receiver. I know he's going to be someone who's going to be pretty chalky, trying to get away from him. Marquise, that is. And Connor, like I just don't have, like they're saying it's a bell cow role. He didn't really see many targets last week. I think you can question that. And I think running back, there's a lot of opportunity cost. Like our projections aren't projecting any of these Miami running backs, which I'm very high on. Devin Achane, for example. Detroit running backs, I really like a good bit. Yeah, I think those guys are like different ways in tournaments that you can get different by utilize. For one thing, they're in running backs. They're in situations that are committees, which people tend to stay away from. But I think they also have very good upside, all four of them, whether it's Mostert, Achane, or Montgomery or Gibbs. I think that last week it's a revenge situation for Montgomery. I know it's not a big thing, but last week Gibbs let Montgomery get a touchdown at the goal line. Maybe it kind of goes the other way this week. I do prefer Gibbs though. Chicago's been pretty good against the run, but they're not. They're giving up a lot of receptions to running backs, so Gibbs would be my choice. But I'm playing 150, so I'm going to have a little bit of both. And Achane is just probably the best running back play on the slate, and I'm not really going to move off that.
I think the situation you're describing is that Gibbs
that is. Yeah.
Gibbs ran off like a 43-yarder or so. He got knocked out like the half-yard line. They're going to bring in Montgomery, and Montgomery said, "No, you just stay out, get your touchdown." But Montgomery's not doing that this week versus the Bears. He wants in there.
No.
He wants that revenge touchdown.
Yeah.
The thing is, though, is that the Bears defense has been spectacular, like sneaky, really, really good. And that's another hand in the dirt thing. And I was really surprised, start of the week. I was on the Pick Six show, and Rebar and Daigle were telling me about, how good the Bears defense, sneaky good that they've been of late. And I'm not saying I want to run away from it, but and also the receivers as well. Like they haven't allowed a receiver since like week 2. Don't quote me on this, with more like 65 or 70 receiving yards. And some like legit receivers like that they've kind of locked down for whatever reason. Now I don't know if that's like small sample things. We're always dealing with small samples with the NFL, but yeah, it's just I'm in my head as far as the Chicago defense being better of late, and I feel like I should probably throw that out of my head. It sounds like you like Detroit for good reason.
I like that game in general. To hit on like Fields, I think is a phenomenal play.
Yeah,
I know we're at running back though. I think the Bears running backs are sneaky in play. Foreman and Roscoe Johnson. What's Johnson's price? Like, just interested because I think like the Bears running backs are going to get lost in translation, and whoever's like the pass catching running back, if they're trailing or I don't know, depending on which way you kind of see the game script going, I think they could be interesting. Haven't heard anyone really talk about them all week.
It's 3 guys is the problem, Bobby. Not to cut you off, but like it's a 3-man split with Foreman and Herbert and Roschon Johnson. For what it's worth, projection wise, Johnson's getting the worst projection. They're all 5% or less. They're all cheap, but like you don't really know who's going to do what. It seems like a mess, but it also seems like maybe something if you want to throw a dart, you're talking like million maker stuff, obviously, not like single entry, 3-entry max stuff. Or run back for Detroit.
Yeah, I would think if you had any clarity on, I didn't know Herbert was back. I thought it was still Johnson, and which is bad on my part. Yeah, which was like, I don't know. Yeah, if you have some clarity in 150, it's fine, I guess.
It's going to be a split between Foreman and Herbert, and I think Johnson's only projected for 1 rush attempt.
So I'm totally kicking Johnson out. What's Herbert's price?
We're projecting 4 fantasy points for Johnson, by the way. I don't know unless they're expecting 40 rushing yards.
So Bobby, I would go Herbert for 4,700 if you wanted to get kind of like contrarian with the running back from that game. But I wouldn't play Johnson at all, even in a 150 setting. But I think Herbert would be okay. We have him projected for 8 rush attempts, and we got Foreman projected for 8.66 rush attempts. So I think Herbert, if you wanted to get fancy in a 150 setting, I think that would be okay.
Yeah, appreciate the clarity there, because I obviously had that situation wrong. I get a kick out job from Herbert.
I do love that game though. I really do. I think Justin Fields is super cheap. I really love DJ Moore.
I think he's the best play on the slate, DJ Moore. Like, not to cut you off.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
Like,
so
I
two
would
best plays of the slate. Oh, that was different positions. Where you gave so the best plays of the slate. You already gave it away, Bobby. We're supposed to tease the people, keep them around. You're saying Achane best running back, and you're saying best receiver is DJ Moore. Is that what I'm hearing so far?
I think Achane is from the wide receiver position. I think DJ Moore is the best, just because of it's just a fantastic spot. First read targets from Fields when Fields is in has been astronomical. He had Badgett in previously, so I think you could play DJ Moore in cash games. If I was playing cash, I would definitely consider him. Yeah, and then Achane for me is just different positions. Like, I think he's a very strong running back play today.
Let's focus on that. Let's talk about Miami. Miami's the biggest total on the board, right? Almost 30, 29.5. We've seen this offense just light up bad defenses. They dropped a 70 burger earlier in the year. They could struggle a little bit versus good teams. The Raiders are not a good team. They're 2-0 recently since the coaching change, but that's when they've been beating up on the terrible New York teams. Vegas, West to East Coast, 1 o'clock game out here in Miami. They're 13-point dogs. The tricky thing here, Bobby, is Miami's got, they're fully healthy coming off the bye. 4 running backs, Mostert, Achane, Ahmed, Wilson. Mr. Gerg in chat says, I'm not playing Achane in his 10 touches. But that dude could break a slate in 10 touches, right? He's electric.
In tournaments, you should be considering Achane in his 10 touches today, even at 6,600.
It's so tricky. And if Miami's grinding this game out, let's say they're up by 21 in the fourth quarter, there's no way it's Achane, right? It's Mostert, maybe, probably Ahmed, maybe Sprinkle Wilson just for funsies. But maybe the damage has already been done by Achane. You mentioned Hill. Certainly, and I like Waddle a good bit. I have him.
I like Waddle too.
I bet his player prop earlier last month, yesterday, I think in the middle of the night or something like that. When I was digging into some things, I like Waddle to kind of bounce back, and of course Hill is spectacular as well. But it is weird. Some of their players are going to be a little bit ignored on an 11-game slate. You just always play the Dolphins. Just always play them. They should always be in your pool. And they're pricey, so it's hard to hit that lock button. And both running backs, Mostert and Achane, are just pretty expensive, especially on FanDuel, by the way. Achane is 6.6 on DK, which is fine. $8K for Achane? Come on, man. But he's not going to get owned. It's people are not going to play him, so you can sort of play that game. Talk about the Dolphins, Bobby, and how you're handling what sounds like. I know Achane's your guy in best ball. By the way, did you take the victory lap? I know you had a ton of.
I didn't victory lap. Neil shouted me out for it. Yeah.
You have a lot of likely. The backup tight end for Baltimore, Andrews.
I stacked that. So I'm not a week 17 game stack guy, but I stacked for whatever reason, I just had this feeling on Andrews, the volatility. Also, Andrews is I think he's diabetic as well. So his going through this is dead serious. Some of my reasoning, I have a family member who is also, and it hurts your body, obviously, right? So I don't know. He's just had so many years of not dealing with injuries, and I just felt the volatility of the position. You could play likely, and then I don't know. I loved Achane.
You felt like
my team still sucks. So my team's terrible.
You felt like he was due for a season-long injury because he was diabetic.
This is how you have to look at things. No, he hasn't had any. He hasn't had any injuries throughout his career. Tight end's super volatile. I don't know, if he gets hurt, it could be a more difficult time for him to rehabilitate himself. That's what.
Did you know? Blow your mind. Did you know Kyle Ripken was diabetic?
No. I didn't know
that. I made that up.
That would really ruin Bobby's whole thesis on diabetes and season-long injuries.
Yeah, I don't know. I just made that up just for no particular reason. Yeah, Tim, what are you doing with the Dolphins? Because it feels like, and you mostly focus on. I don't want to speak for you, but are you making one lineup today? Like one main lineup? How many main lineups do we have today?
Yeah, just one. Like the Dolphins are really about contest type, right? Like I can totally understand what Bobby's saying about getting exposure to HAN in large field GPPs. I can't play him in single entries. He is projected for only 10 rush attempts. Like that's not enough volume. Like I completely understand that he can break the slate in 10 touches. Absolutely. That's not the way that I can go about it. So yeah, but like if you're building 150, I have absolutely no issue with people getting to him. Like he's got a huge ceiling.
I like how the chat is now accusing Bobby of being anti-diabetic, which I didn't know.
Well, he is. I mean, he is clearly.
Is there a stance of being anti?
He is the anti-diabetic. It's pretty obvious.
It's a weird accusation, but all right. I'm not playing a running back with 4 running backs and maybe projected for 10, 12 touches or something like that coming off a knee injury is what the chat is saying as well. And yeah, the HN thing is it's tricky, Bobby. I don't know what to do with that. And like Mostert, what about Mostert? You mentioned HN, he's the sexy play, but Mostert's also the guy that could sneak in and get a couple goal line touchdowns. What are you doing with him?
I like both of them. I think HN, Mostert, they're both extremely strong plays. Waddle, everyone's going to be playing Tyreek, and it's not the greatest matchup for Tyreek where it kind of benefits Waddle based on how they play their coverage. So I'm going to have a good bit of Waddle. And the interesting question with Miami running backs is, can you play 2 of them together? In most of the scenarios in large field GPPs, you can't. But earlier in the season, I think it was week 3 or 2 or whatever, we saw that you could. So I'm going to be over on both Miami running backs and Jalen Waddle. Tyreek will probably play the field.
Matt saying, you guys see the news, no limits in HN. Why are we only projecting 10 touches? Yeah, he can get like 14 or 15, like sure. But like he's not like a guy that's going to go out there and touch the ball 30 times. So I guess he doesn't have to either.
Yeah, he doesn't have to. Like we have to get over this bias that he can't. Like he's just. His ceiling is there. He's likely. Imagine when he starts getting these extra carries.
You think he ever will? Like, you think he's ever going to be a guy that gets the ball 20, 22 times a game? I don't. And that might be what's happening with Pollard, right? Like, not to compare the two, but Pollard in a smaller sample, he would kind of sub in and he would be outrageous. And, he would average like, I don't know, 6 yards a touch or whatever it was.
Who's the player comp for you for Devon A-Chain?
You know what? Well, the one CJ2K, right? Is that the one people comp him to? What's the player profiler for it? There's actually a site.
CJ2K. So did CJ2K ever get 18 to 25 touches per game?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, if you want to go that route, yes.
I think it's a favorable comp. Like I think it's definitely in line right now.
What do you have, Tim? Who would you comp HN to? I'm pulling it up right now, the official site.
Yeah, I don't know. He's a tough one. He's a unicorn.
Based on like their cone score and things like that. Yeah, based on the workout metrics, I was correct. It was Chris Johnson is the best comparable according to Player Profiler. I feel like I remember seeing that. I looked that up not too long ago or at some point. But yeah, he looks. It's the player comp is the dude for Baltimore, right? At least in a small sample, that Keaton Mitchell, right? People are comparing him already to HN. But yeah, Tim, single entry stuff, and this is worth talking about. You kind of mentioned single entry, and in chat, they're asking, Geek Hippie is saying, hey, single entry advice. Because we sort of talk about that stuff. We kind of assume people, more or less know what they're doing at this point. And not say you don't, but just if you can give like a 101, like a minute on the difference between single entry contests as opposed to cash, as opposed to you're trying to win a contest with like 50,000 people or 100,000 people. What's the difference when it comes to your strategy and building your lineup?
I guess you don't have to hit as much like pure ceiling in single entry as you do in like 150 setting. Obviously, you want to identify what you believe is good chalk, because in single entry, a lot of times you do play chalk and you can win, but you do have to make certain pivots. So I'm kind of looking at optimal rates right now at QB. And Brock Purdy currently has our highest optimal rate over Kyler Murray. And so that kind of makes me kind of want to lean more to Purdy in single entry because of that fact. He's going to be optimal about 13.5% of the time and owned around 12%. So you're getting a little bit of positive leverage with Purdy. And then I'm also looking at running back also with optimal rate. And obviously CMAC has the highest optimal rate. That should be a surprise to anybody, but he's only coming in at 12% owned. And so that's really, really strong positive leverage. So I really like pairing those two together in single entry. I still believe though, like for cash, I think that Arizona game is a little bit safer, like a better floor. So I'm building into more of a ceiling with that 49ers game and getting a little bit more of a floor with that Arizona game.
You're playing Purdy in 3 entry max single entry. Who's your most likely pairing for him? I think, and hearing what you're saying, and I'm pretty sure I agree. CMC is probably the best pairing.
Yes.
Just not always. It's quarterback, running back. A lot of times that's negative, but those two, the way CMC catches the ball, I think it's positive correlation. Debo, I think, is pretty interesting, but they're all healthy. So like Kittle's hard to play, but and it's really hard to predict when his ceiling games are going to come. They just come out of nowhere sometimes. He had that game where he had 4 targets, 3 catches, and 3 touchdowns. Like, how do you see that coming? But yeah, now would you double stack it with the Debo or an Ayuk, or I think just CMC and Brock is good enough?
I think you could definitely double stack this game, this 49ers team. I think there's enough play volume to go around. I would probably go with Debo if I had to, but see, I think for me that would be more of like a larger field, 150 setting type scenario, not a single entry. So I think in single entry, I would just stick with Purdy and CMAC.
Let's have this conversation. I'll throw it to Bobby. We have to talk about Tony Pollard. I kind of mentioned him in passing. What about Pollard on FanDuel versus Carolina bad defense? And I saw somebody else. They were asking Pollard versus the reason why I was going to throw it to Tim. They're asking Pollard versus Achane. Somebody else is asking that as well. And the lack of efficiency from Pollard. What was it? A quote? Was it CeeDee Lamb that was saying they got to get Pollard going? It feels like there's a couple guys. It feels like you're supposed to. If it's ever going to happen, I feel like I've said this before too. If it's ever going to happen for Pollard this season, this is the week it's supposed to happen versus Carolina. Monster favorites. Carolina, not a good run stopping team. Bobby, have you been playing Pollard so far? Do you feel like you're owed? Are you martingaling it? Have you been sharp and not playing him at all? If you have been, do you feel like you have to keep it going? But the price looks pretty good. Theoretically, if all you know is Pollard, you went away for a month or 2 months, or is your first week of NFL, Pollard's the lead back and the team's got a 26 total. How is he this cheap versus this team and nobody wants to play him? But yeah, I think he's one of the sticking points on this slate, Tony Pollard. How are you handling it?
Yeah, so I like both. To your original question, I like Pollard and Achane. I would probably prefer Achane because of the ownership in tournaments. He's not going to be owned, right? Pollard, everyone's kind of ready to get on that this week. If we get the Dowdle news, Pollard's ownership will probably, if we find out Dowdle's out, Pollard's ownership is going to skyrocket a little bit, I would imagine, or just get a bump. Everyone wants to make Pollard work. He got good speak, basically good speak in the media from CeeDee Lamb. Like you said, they want it to be a Pollard week. So I think Carolina, people kind of know they're a run funnel. I like both plays. Would prefer Achane, but I like Pollard as well.
Tim, your official take on Pollard? Would you be okay playing him in cash? It was just sort of that's where you landed on it. Yeah, Pollard and single entry.
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely play Pollard. There's just guys in that same kind of price range that I like more. I like Brian Robinson more. I like Aaron Jones more. Kind of almost even like Breece Hall more. That might be. And Josh Jacobs too. So there are guys right in that price range that I prefer over Pollard. So yeah, like I played Pollard a couple times on FanDuel, but I've for the most part have stayed away from him, fortunately. So I don't know. It's tough. He's clearly getting the, like Bobby said, the talk in the media about getting him going, and maybe they do finally. I don't know. I kind of thought that would happen last week, and of course it turned into the Dak show. So I don't know. But I mean that price range at 6,600 is really quite loaded.
5 of the last 6 weeks, Pollard has single-digit fantasy points on DK. The one explosion was 17 points versus the Chargers. It's really bad. Like if you're just looking at the game log stuff, it's supposed to be getting better. The matchup looks good. It's a tough situation. But you mentioned Jacobs, and I know he was hitting stuff earlier in the week. I guess he's not hitting it as much now. It's just, come on. Like, they're like a 2-touchdown dog at Miami. I know coach is like, we want to run the ball a billion times, and if he gets 100 yards, we're going to win. But this Miami offense is coming. I'm a little bit concerned about Jacobs, and like if they're down 2-3 touchdowns, does he turn to like Abdullah or whatever? Do you feel like you're dead?
I don't think they're going to turn to Abdullah. I think this coach loves Jacobs so much. He's project. Well, I'm serious. He's projected for 20 rush attempts. That's just his median projection.
I'll take the under.
Okay.
How many weeks has the new coach been there? I just want to
2 weeks.
Target.
And he's played both New York teams. He's played terrible teams. They haven't been down. Now they're playing Miami, who's is better. What happens when they're down 14-0? Now, of course, they could be up 10-3 at the start of the first quarter, and this is like a nonsense conversation. And Jacobs can get 27 carries, and Tim, you'll be smart here. Yeah, I don't know, because it's a good math play, right? It's a very good math play. But when you use your brain and start telling yourself a story, at least maybe this is me, then it's like, well, this can go the wrong direction. This can turn ugly real fast. And like run backs in general, did you feel okay about Jacobs as a run back if you're playing, a fair bit of Miami or a Tua stack of some sort? Adams, it's O'Connell seems limited to some degree, so I don't know what his ceiling is. Rumors are already out, by the way, the Jets are going to pursue him again in the offseason. I would imagine. I mean, why would you want to pursue a 30-year-old receiver with that contract? Different conversation. Michael Mayer is a cheap tight end. If you're looking to be a little bit different, that's an interesting run back as far as the Raiders.
That's who I kind of like as a run back.
I think that's the best way. If you're going to force, you don't have to, but if you are going to have a run back in that Raider game, I think it's Mayer 2-7, which is one way to be different. Well, Bobby, it sounds like you're going to be playing a fair bit of Dolphins. How are you handling the Raiders?
Yeah, I don't think you need to run it back. Like they could just drop 50 like they did in week 3. But if I was running it back, I think Mayer and Jacobs are the two guys. Mayer's very cheap on DK. Jacobs, I'm kind of fluctuating on Jacobs. I was on him, then I was off him. Now Dean's making me kind of circle the wagons on him. So I was worried about his target share, right? In this new coach. So I don't know. It's there's a lot of opportunity cost at running back. So I would tread carefully. That's all I'll say.
I'm not trying to sway him. I'm just trying to get both sides of it. And I don't really, and I'm also talking it out in my head too.
I like to be swayed like that. I like the dialogue though.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes you get some clarity at the end of the conversation, which is good because people are listening and they hear things, and you don't have to, obviously it's not gospel, but yeah, I come away from this show and I'll step aside and I'll have some different takes, and for better or for worse, hopefully more so for better. And I'm a little hazy on the Jacobs thing, and I heard Tim say him, and I was like, oh, I'm okay. I wanted to hear him out, and I don't know what to do with Jacobs because I know he's a good math play, and if this game is close, you can't just assume it's going to blow out. If we're doing a draft, what game is most likely to blow out? Okay, this is the 1-1, but it doesn't mean it has to happen. It's a tricky situation. Let me hit some of the questions.
The worst thing you could be as a DFS player is someone who's closed-minded. Definitely be open to all situations, right?
You got to be fluid, man. You got to be fluid. You got to be willing to adjust based upon, with new information. I reserve the right to change my mind. All right. So some stuff in chat. Gonna hit up some of the comments. Eric wants to know, but Eric was talking about Mooney in cash. He said LOL. I'm guessing he's joking, but now he's touting Komet and Mooney. I know Komet had a nice kinship with Bajent. I think Bobby, you were talking about the run back of Moore. Yeah, the Bears. Just you're talking about that matchup there in Detroit on the turf there, Justin Fields. Can you play Fields just naked, just by himself? Do you have to run it back with Moore? Mooney's 3-3, so it's not completely insane if you're looking for like a punt pivot. He's theoretically can get there and Komet. We've seen him separate multiple times. Like, and he's only been around so long. We've seen him separate and break a slate from the tight ends. So I don't think it's nuts to throw out Komet either. He's had several 2-touchdown games. I never get them right. But yeah, Bobby, Fields. It sounds like you like Fields. Sounds like you like Moore. And then bring Komet to that conversation too. Talk about the Bears.
Yeah, for me, it's Moore. I do want to stack Fields. I guess if you're in smaller field contests, you could go with not stacking him. I would probably still stack him. That's just how I play. I never really run a QB naked. But yeah, Komet's in play. I think Mooney's fine for larger field stuff to throw them in as flyers. But the guy for me, like without a doubt, is Moore. My favorite run back should probably be Amon-Ra. Laporte is good. Josh Reynolds down there between 3 and 4K, I think is a really good play. I don't mind the Goff side either, just to throw it out there. Jameson Williams and all. It's just a really good game environment. I think everyone's kind of flocking to Houston, Arizona, and this is kind of a spot you should be looking at in tournaments.
What's the third game? Is there a third game, Tim? Right? Arizona, Houston. I think Chicago, Detroit might be the next one. Is there a third game where it's probably not Pittsburgh, Cleveland?
Broccoli Boy is absolutely killing me in chat. Killing me for that take. Killing me. Just getting this right.
Who's killing you in chat?
Tim's best friend.
Oh,
just taking
it. It's pretty good though. I mean, it's good stuff.
It's good. Yeah. I get it. I think there's more to that than what you guys actually realize.
I don't think so, Bobby. I don't think there is.
Okay.
Okay. So we got.
I'm just
so we were talking.
Chat.
We were talking
the third
about
best game, Tim.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I actually kind of have some interest in this Green Bay Chargers game.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. It's kind of too bad it's in Green Bay. I really like Austin Eckler, like as a GPP play. I think he's only 8,600. That wide receiver core is extremely banged up. So I think he might end up getting a couple extra receptions. So I really like the Chargers. I haven't played Jordan Love all year, but I think this is a really good spot. I think it's also a really good spot for Aaron Jones. So I really like that game quite a bit. I don't think it's going to be that highly owned either. So I think that might come in number 3 for me. I'm not sure what else you guys would think. It's not, I mean, I love Washington, but I don't want to bring anyone back from the Giants. So I'm trying to think of like a game stack situation here. So I do have some interest on both sides, obviously of Houston, Arizona, obviously of Detroit, Chicago, Green Bay, and the Chargers. But then it's like Dallas, Carolina. Like, yeah, I love pieces of Dallas, but I don't really like anybody in Carolina. I don't know. So it's in terms of game stacks, I guess Green Bay Chargers would be my next favorite.
I know Bobby earlier in the show mentioned Singletary having the highest, Vegas prop for rushing yards, 74.5 is what I'm looking at at Scores and Odds. The second highest number is a player that's not really going to get played. It's Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley, his number is 70.5. And we saw he had like 30 touches or so in that one game because they have a college quarterback, and maybe that's rounding up. I know he's bad at college too. I think it's Syracuse, that DeVito. And this Washington defense ain't great. And it's a little bit of leverage against Washington defense because that defense is going to be fairly popular. Barkley's just, I think he's more of a large field play. I don't think he's completely insane though, but I think it's the Chargers Packers as well, Tim. This is similar to like there's body parts out on the Chargers. Parham is going to be the tight end one now in the absence of Everett. They're down Guyton. They're down Williams.
They're not down Guyton. They're down. They're not down.
What's that?
Guyton. Guyton steps in, correct?
No, I think Guyton's not expected to play.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I thought Guyton. Did we
Bobby,
get that?
You got to get the updated. You got to get.
Bobby's really struggling on the injury reports this last couple days. It's all right.
I know in the Tournament Takes podcast, they were raving. They said Bobby did a fabulous job. You guys were Ric Flairing all over the place. Woo! You brought the energy. But, apparently you fumbled a little bit in the injury report, and you still.
Yeah. Guyton's out, dude.
Well, he's been working on his diabetes thesis for like this whole week. So, give the guy a break, all right?
You can only juggle so many balls at once. That's fair enough. But, I think Eckler looks fabulous. I think Parham is an interesting pivot, again, away from the chalk that we're going to see in Arizona as far as the tight ends. And, Pollard, Christian Watson has to be thankful for Tony Pollard existing, because if it wasn't for Tony Pollard flopping every single week, Christian Watson's now 4-6. And this is a guy. Now, Bobby, you're a best ball guy, right? At least sometimes you're a best ball guy. When things go well for you, you can victory lap it. But Watson was a third rounder in best ball. He's been a disaster, but he's down to 4-6 against the Chargers, basically the best possible matchup on the board. And I bet his over the other night. And you want to guess what his over under was in the sports book? I bet it at, and the number is low enough. What's that?
What's the over-under? Reading chat.
35.5, Bobby. Good Lord. That's like one play. It's like one I'm on raw play. It's too low, right? Until the game's over and I lose. But I had to bet the over on it. And I bet his alt numbers too, because I'm a sicko. But I think I'm going to play some Christian Watson. I don't think it's that deep as far as wide receivers today. And we're playing the price. And he's also, I don't think he's even that heavily owned. I know he's cheap enough and he's an interesting run back. And Tim mentioned Eckler. Rebar put Eckler in my head. And I think that's a fabulous play, a fabulous pivot off of CMC, especially considering how thin they are. And he's probably going to catch several more balls. Where's Watson as far as ownership today? 9%, 10%. What are you doing with that, Bobby? Because Watson, again, if you're game long watching, it's been a disaster. But this matchup should be good. He's cheap enough. The 4K zone's not amazing. I'm going to fire some Watson today for better or worse.
Yeah, I like Green Bay. I like Aaron Jones. I like Christian Watson. I like Jaden Reed. I like Romeo Dobbs. For large field stuff, I think you should have basically all those guys in your player pool. For me, though, I would say Christian Watson and Aaron Jones are my two favorite. Probably going to be well over the field on both, and also Jordan Love.
All right. Anything else to say there, Tim? You kind of brought up the conversation of Green Bay and the Chargers. Tim, I don't think you answered the question, Bobby. Maybe you agree. If we're going to power rank the games, we're going to have a draft of, not considering ownership and all that kind of stuff, or if you want to bring ownership in, by all means, go for it. But if we throw out, the most popular games, we're talking about Houston, Arizona. You talked about Chicago and Detroit. Tim brought up the Chargers and the Packers. It's an 11-game slate, but San Fran we like, but the Bucks, are we running anybody back in the Bucks? I guess you can. Sure.
Definitely Evans. I would definitely run Evans back on the Bucks.
Evans over White you for Evans over White as a run back?
I like both, but I would prefer Evans.
Okay. Seattle versus the Rams, 46. And we haven't talked about the Rams, and this is another player I bet the over on. Cooper Kupp. I think it's a little bit too low considering people are a little bit cautious, but I think Kupp is going to just drop, 10 and 100, maybe get in the box as well too. Nakua's back. The Rams are getting healthy. Their running back is coming back next week. I think it's next week. we don't care about next week. It's DFS. We care about today and today only. Home favorite versus Seattle in a dome. Pretty big number. We might not get Lockett. I think Metcalf's an interesting, run back who's just not really going to get played. If Lockett doesn't go, maybe JSN gets a little more interesting. If you really want to be goofy and ambitious in a large field, a little bit of Jake Bobo. Just, again, that's super large field stuff. But is that the game? What's the game, Bobby? Because there's just not a lot of games that was, oh, yeah, got to get some of that.
For me, like I said, Detroit and the Bears is the one that I'm going to be targeting the most. Like I said, DJ Moore is probably the best game in the slate. I mean, best play in the slate for me from the wide receiver position. What was the rest of the question?
I was asking who was third. What's the third game behind Detroit and Arizona? Yeah, behind those games. What's the third game?
I would go Miami, Vegas.
And you're running back Vegas stuff.
I don't think you have to. Why do we have to force run backs? You can play Miami and they can get 50. Like I said, you don't have to force that. And then probably
that's the game with the team.
Followed by it would be Green Bay and the Rams. I think I like your Cup call. I couldn't find real clarity on what to do with Cup because I'm worried about Stafford. It's nice you have conviction though.
Donnie's asking if JSN is a lock if Lockett misses. By the way, bad job of the NFL. 11 games, 8 early, 3 late. We got to do better. We got to go 7-4. We got to go 7-4. NFL, come on, stop this. Some of us are watching Red Zone. We need more. We need Tim. We can't have this. Why are they all playing at the same time? I don't want to get on my soapbox about that, but we can do better. Is all I'm saying. He's asking if JSN is a lock, and I would not say he's a lock. Tim, you want to talk about that? He gets incrementally better, but I think Bobo might get a little bit better. I think Metcalf's ceiling gets a little bit higher, and I'm probably going to build some Metcalf stuff, but a little bit less options as far as the late, right? 4:00, the late window. Jets, Bills, Seattle Rams, and Bucks Niners. So there's something to work with, but we haven't really talked a lot of Jets Bills. You mentioned, I think somebody mentioned Breece Hall, who's
I kind of like Breece. I kind of like Breece Hall, but I'm not really crazy into that game. I'm not going to be playing him in single entry. So
I think there are interesting pieces in that game outside of Breece Hall, though, cheaper pieces. Khalil Shakir,
Tyler Conklin, I think
is a great play. That might be the best play.
Yeah,
that might be the best play.
We have this really, really strong tight end, cheat tight ends today, Parham, Mayer, Conklin. There's some really, really strong.
Freiermuth is 2.5.
Yeah, Freiermuth is stone mint.
That's who you're searching for. I can tell.
Yeah. So it's we have some really, really strong cheat tight ends today. Saying that, though, I'm still playing McBride in cash. I still think McBride might still be the best play in tournaments, even though he's going to be really highly owned. His usage is amazing, but it might be an interesting, way to go is play McBride and then another super cheap tight end and then pay up everywhere else. Play your McCaffrey, play your Tyreek, something like that. Because I think some of these cheap tight ends are really strong plays.
Let's power rank them, Bobby, as far as the cheap tight ends. By the way, Gridiron Beauties is throwing Tommy Tremble into the conversation. Triple H? What's the guy's name? Is not playing today.
Is he not?
The guy with the hair. Hurst.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hayden Hurst.
Yeah. His middle name is Harvey, I believe. Fairly certain on that. Don't Google. No Wikipedia necessary. And I even saw Broccoli Boy in chat asking a serious question about power ranking. Yeah, the cheap tight ends. And I guess if we're looking for a way to be different, away from Trey McBride. Not that McBride's this super, super cheap guy. He was once in the 2s, 3K, that kind of thing. Now he's 4.4, but still too cheap. But, he has to get a little bit more to justify that salary, Bobby.
And I just want to say one more thing about tight ends real quick. I love Kincaid as a pivot for McBride. Talk about a guy that gets, really, really high usage, not the best game script, but I mean, he's going to go way under owned, I think, because if you're in that 4K range, you're just going to be clicking McBride, where Kincaid is sitting right there for $500 more. I think he makes for a fantastic pivot.
Alex is even throwing Durham Smythe into the conversation. I'm still scarred from Durham Smythe week. Remember that?
I don't think you have to play a guy like Smythe on this slate with all the value we have at tight end. I agree with Tim with pretty much everything, like the McBride, strong tight end play. And I think Tyler Conklin is just under 3K, the best tight end play on the slate by a long shot. The Dalton Kincaid pivot I like as well. The only thing I would say about Dalton Kincaid is that it's Ken Dorsey's out there, so now maybe Allen takes off more. And Kincaid's likely like in the red zone. That's where he would make his hay pretty much. So yeah, I don't know. Well, he's still getting past. His ADOT's just low. But yeah, I don't know. I Fryer moved at 2.5. Mayer is a good run back too, under 2K for the Miami side.
A lot of these guys are like going to go like 3 for 30 and not be great, but a couple are going to do something. And it's kind of tricky to figure out which ones. You mentioned the firing there of the OC in Buffalo, Dorsey. I guess it's his fault they kept fumbling the ball, and it's his fault they missed the field goal, and then whatever, there's 12 guys in the field. Whatever. I guess they had to get somebody. It's just a disaster what's going on in Buffalo. They've had a lot of injuries defensively too.
Staying on that game, Michael Carter-Williams, was he was cut? Was that the situation?
MCW, the point guard,
Michael Carter, whatever his name. NBA,
he's gone.
DFS.
The chat's gonna kill you. Yeah, right. Yeah, he was like, yeah, it was good.
So Brees is a better play, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's not like Dalvin Cook's all of a sudden going to get dusted off and play a bunch. Like he's going to get some reps, I imagine. But yeah, I think Hall's really good. I think he's definitely in your running back mix. Tim's mentioned it several times. It's just Hall versus Robinson. Tim, who do you got? Probably Robinson, right? I'm guessing dollar for dollar.
Definitely Robinson.
But Hall can certainly beat him. Like that's not going to shock us.
Nope.
Hall versus Aaron Jones, Tim. Same price, essentially.
Yeah. I really like that Green Bay Chargers game, so I'd still go there in Jones.
Alex throwing out one more tight end. Logan Thomas might not get injured. Sure. There's a whole bunch. And I think, God, I was reading Alex did an article on the sim stuff, which is worth mentioning.
I'm glad you're mentioning that. That was a really good article. I'm glad that I read
that. Yeah, so that's feel free to check that out. And it's a good segue to our read. Lets people know. If you're not aware, it's been around for several weeks now. We did drop the beta version, the new NFL lineup building tool, SimLabs. For a limited time, it's actually free. You can try it out right now. SimLabs is a brand new product that generates DFS lineups using the power of simulation. It's not ironically named. It combines data from every aspect of the slate to churn out lineups that match your preferences. You just make a few clicks here and there. It'll pump out hundreds of well-built, correlated lineups ready to go, whatever contest type you're playing. You let it know if you're playing in a small field, large field, if you're playing the lotto, that kind of thing. Check out the link in the description for more information. Maybe we can get producer Steve to go ahead and drop a link in chat as well. About 15, 20 minutes away, you're getting Erik Beimfohr. You're getting TJ Zwarych. After that, for crunch time, you're getting Kristi and Brit and Andre taking y'all home. Do continue with I'm doing my best to catch up on chat. I apologize if I missed your question. I'm scrolling up. I'm scrolling down. If your question was not asked, I may have missed it. Feel free to ask it again. Also, while you're at it, while you're doing stuff, hit that like button. Do subscribe. Turn on those notifications. Do all the things. Hit all the buttons. Help us out. We do appreciate all that. Broccoli Boy is Googling if Michael Carter-Williams has diabetes. Combining a couple of the themes of the show.
Not to get off the Broccoli Boy, Donnie Watson in chat brought up Dak, and they're throwing pass rate over expectations really high. Everyone's kind of jumping on Pollard, and we haven't really spoke on Dak. Any thoughts on
Great
Dak?
point. I think you're supposed to be over. I think you're just like you're supposed to be over not playing results, but I think you're supposed to be over. And Lamb obviously is spectacular. And it's one of those things that I think Tim said it earlier. It's like he's afraid of playing. I'm paraphrasing, but I don't want to play the Dolphins because they're going to score too many points. Then all of a sudden my guy goes away in the second half. But okay, but like the worst threat is your players are going to score too many points. Or your team is. Hopefully, he's a part of that. Yeah, Dallas big favorite in Carolina. Can Carolina punch back? The team total like 15-ish. Yeah, Tim, what are your thoughts as far as Dak? I mean, the clear and obvious one is Lamb, but salary's a thing. So theoretically, you can go to Cooks, you can go to Gallup, another tight end. You need another tight end, Ferguson. Sure, why not? I think you probably can. Can you maybe pair Prescott and Pollard and get like all the touchdowns? You know, Pollard will catch passes. He's not like CMC out there or Eckler, but he'll catch some passes. But I think you're supposed to have some Prescott. Go ahead.
I'm trying to see what I would have left for salary if I played Dak and Lamb and Pollard. I don't know.
I mean, you can get cheap Houston pieces around that, cheap Arizona pieces around that. But is that too obvious and chalky? I don't know.
No, that's definitely not going to be chalky if you play Dak, Pollard, and Lamb. Dak's not going to have any ownership today. He's 73. He's 7,300. He's going to be 6% owned. Lamb is currently 7% owned. So I mean, this Dallas team is not going to be owned. I would not worry about ownership if you're looking to stack this team in any capacity. So I would not be worried about that. The problem is you have to get you only have $4,400 left. So
you can make that work.
You can make it work. I think you have to get off of a lot of the high-end pieces that we really like today, though. Like, so no C-Mac, no Tyreek. Okay, you can't play those guys. I don't know. So it's I guess it's doable, but I'm
going to make this lineup. By the way, I'm doing it. I'm going to play this lineup.
All right, do it.
Jets defense helps you out a little bit. 2-6.
Yeah, you can throw Singletary in there because you're not really worried about aggregate ownership, right? Because this Cowboys team is not going to be that chalky the way that you're building it. So you can play Singletary.
Do we need a Carolina run back? I think the answer is no. I'm okay with Thielen, but I don't know if I'm going to. I don't have the money for Thielen. I don't think.
No, you don't need to run.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
You don't need to. I guess if you needed to, you could go Tremble. Right? Like, I guess because you might need salary on this team. But yeah, and then you could throw in a couple cheap Arizona wide receivers like Marquise Brown or Rondale Moore. You could even throw McBride in there. Yeah, I mean, I guess you could do it.
Would you play two Arizona receivers without Kyler? They're cheap enough, I guess, but it's also kind of.
I think you could definitely. I think you could definitely go Rondale and McBride and not play Murray.
Bobby, what's your thoughts on this conversation here, as far as like a little onslaught Dallas and like getting cheap pieces around them?
Yeah, me and Tim are agreeing on everything. I don't think you need I think you play two of the Arizona Cardinals wide receivers and not play Kyler.
Bobby, you're the hand in the dirt guy, so I'm going to give you the hand in the dirt question from Rockin' PE. Who will play more slot for Houston, Dell or Nico? Do you know this off the top of your head? Who's the slot guy? Who's playing? Who's the X? Who's the Y? Hand in the dirt, Bobby. Do you know this or no?
I can look it up right now. 1 sec. Go to Tim, and then I'll just find the answer.
Yeah. Let's see. Dak doubles with Lamb and Cooks. Yeah, you can do that. Sure. Why not? Let's see. Hey, double tight ends. Is that we've mentioned a lot of tight ends, and it kind of opens up salary. We saw double tight end smash last week with Hawkinson and McBride. I think that was our optimal. At least it was earlier in the week. I don't know if where it closed. Was it? Was that the optimal, Tim? Number one?
I believe it was. Yes.
Did you play it? I didn't play it.
I didn't play it. I had a pretty good week last week, but I did not play that.
I don't like two tight ends, like a general thought, but maybe I should.
I know. I never want to do it, and I'm really tempted to do it this week. I really am tempted to do it.
So you're on like your one main lineup. You're considering it, or you're not married to?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Just
how would that go? Talk me through it.
Well, I want to find a way to play C-Mac and Tyreek. So, like, punt down, play McBride, then punt down to, like, Conklin or Freiermuth, something like that. That might be how it works. Just like how we opened the show, like, Bobby's like, oh, you got to play Tyreek and cash. Dean, you were like, you got to play Tyreek, and I'm like, no, I want to play C-Mac. So finding a way to play both, I think, is a good strategy.
Where do you have Amon Ra in that conversation? As far we're talking about.
I love him.
We talked about
I love
Cup.
him. Yeah, I mean, I love that game. That's such a good tournament game. Like he's like 100-yard bonus like every single week. I think this entire season. I'm pretty sure.
He's never disappointed you like fully this year. Like every year,
right.
he like does okay. Every week he does.
Right.
He does at least okay.
Right.
Or great.
So yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's a smash play. It's just, I can only play, so many guys. And if I want to play C-Mac, so I can't play Amon-Ra and Tyreek, I don't think.
We give you enough time, Bobby? Who's in the slot?
Yeah,
there
Woods is going to be the slot guy. Like Dell's going to play the slot 38% of the time. No, 30% of the time. He's on the left 33% of the time, on the right 38. And yeah, it would be Noah Brown was playing the slot 53% of the time, and Woods is going to probably step into that role.
Yeah, Alex makes a good point. Like McBride doesn't really play like a tight end. He's not really a tight end. He's just kind of tight end in name. Sure. But it's also kind of a cheat code. If you can get away with playing not a tight end in your tight end spot, you're not really forced to play a tight end. But yeah. Question here in chat. I'll give us to Bobby, and this is kind of a game theory question. More than anything, I believe. Tank Dell versus Deebo Samuel. Tank Dell is going to be, I think, the most popular receiver on the board. Let's see what we have here as far as ownership. Tank on DK, at least, he's 21% ownership, the highest projected owned receiver, or Deebo. And, if it's cash, you're playing Tank. But what about tournaments, Bobby? Obviously there's more context you can add to it, but your thoughts?
Yeah, so I would prefer Tank, I would say, but I think Deebo's in play just in general. Play a lot of zone, so it benefits Deebo. I like just 49ers doubles in general, whether it's Ayuk or Deebo Samuel, or Juwan Jennings as a punt. Like they get crushed by the slot. I like Purdy, obviously. So, yeah, I'm going to have some San Francisco stacks with Ayuk, Deebo, Juwan Jennings, Kittle that don't have McCaffrey in them. Yeah, I think that would be like my thought process. I think you definitely play some Deebo. I will say, though, I think Ayuk would be – I would slightly prefer Ayuk. And in terms of Tank Dell, if I just answering the question in a vacuum, Dell's the better play than Deebo. But I don't know. Purdy's my single entry guy, it looks like. So I might have some Deebo and not Dell.
We got, hey, it's me, Kevin, in caps, in all caps. So it must be true, saying Guyton is playing Dean. And then the Twitter, Tom Pellisario saying Guyton, who suffered a groin injury in practice, will be inactive. So you can either trust Tom Pellisario, who's been like an NFL reporter for like many years, or all caps in chat.
Did that break this morning? Like, when did that break?
He got the injury on Friday. So like earlier in the week, Guyton was hitting stuff. So like
I thought it's
an honest mistake. Yeah, he was hitting some optimals like on Wednesday when I was doing my show on Wednesday. It's like, well, yeah, Guyton, just because the Chargers are so thin, but he's definitely not. Oh yeah, Roto World tweeted out an hour ago Guyton will be inactive as well, but Shannon's gonna go with chat. Fair enough. Understood. They're asking for a FanDuel core. Let's see, FanDuel core. We actually have the lineup HQ tool. You could just jump around and like you can hit the core plays. You can get Noto's best plays. You can get Squirrel's plays, Kristi's plays, Erik's plays. Erik's going to be on in a few minutes. Head chopper as well, but like an overall core. We like Singletary, McBride, Tyreek Hill. Quarterback wise, there is no like unanimous quarterback, but
it's Justin Fields.
Yeah. That's kind of what was hitting stuff because he's just too cheap, right? And
yeah,
it feels like a strange like this is the play. The guy coming back from injury on a team that's not spectacular, but the legs are so good.
Like Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy is $100 more. I guess he's okay, but I'd still prefer to go to Justin Fields on FanDuel.
Are you playing cash over there?
I don't play cash on FanDuel, but I am playing single entry.
Do you know your quarterback is just yet? You're not sure.
It's Justin Fields.
Let's see. David wants to know, this is a Bobby question. Bobby Trees, that's Robert Woods for the uninitiated, or Rondell Moore. If you're in the garbage heap, which do you prefer? You want a cheapie here, Bobby? Rondell Moore or Bobby Trees? One of the cheap receivers, a part of the most popular game on the slate.
It would be Rondell.
And on top of that, Donnie's got a question for Tim. Single entry pivot. How about Curtis Samuel as a cheapie pivot off of Rondell Moore? Do you feel okay with that?
I think that's a really strong pivot.
GR Sauce says, I trust Ed Werder. What does he say about Guyton? If you guys listen to the Ed Werder report, and we're not going to crush Ed Werder because he's like a founding member of Team Mustache, right? I don't know if he's still rocking the stash these days or not, but he gave us a report that Hockenson was only going to play in like key situations.
That might be why I didn't play double tight end last week, Dean.
I mean,
it's a good thing I don't pay attention to news, right? Because I definitely played some Hockenson last.
Certainly not injury news.
No, I was playing Hockenson. Hockenson played the week before, and it was the same issue, right? Like they said, his snaps were limited the week before, and he still played a ton of snaps. I don't know why people overreacted like they did.
I think as a general rule, and I'm guilty of it too. I say we as like, I don't mean you, Bobby, but like we probably overreact a little bit too much with news and weather sometimes, but like, yeah. And especially if the crowd's going to overreact, like, okay, everybody's not playing Hockenson now. Like I didn't think of it that way, but like, yeah, that should have been the alarm bell for sure, but kind of 2020 deal as well. But yeah, the news isn't always correct. And also the news is like a flow, right? Like it's game dependent based upon. What are you laughing at, Bobby? Is the chat having a good time? Are they giving somebody the business?
TJ was like, I trust Clarissa Thompson or whatever. And she was saying the other day she makes up reports.
Yeah, that's a tricky conversation because nobody ever. Yeah, I guess she apparently like couldn't actually get in contact with the coaches, and like let's throw it to Carissa, and she can't be like, I got nothing, and nobody would talk to me. Back to you.
Everybody hates me for some reason on the side.
I mean, yeah,
they're just involved in the game. Like they're just not. They don't care about the sideline reporter.
It's not like a report that matters. It's kind of gray. I don't know. Like, and she's like, yeah, we got to do better on third. I guess she looked at the stats and like, oh, they're 0 for 13 on third down. Coach said we got to do better on third down. Like that's what he would say, I guess. I don't know. And does any of that stuff like matter? If it's like real news, I don't know. Whatever. I know people are giving her a hard. I don't know. It's a tricky spot, I suppose. But it's weird that like nobody's talking to her and all the other ones are getting talked to. I don't know why nobody would talk to her, but whatever. I don't know how that works. Tim,
maybe they're all just making up their. Maybe they're all just making up their reports. Maybe it's a known thing.
Some of the other reporters are coming at her and saying like, "Look, I'm a sideline reporter. I take my job very seriously. I would never do this." So I don't. Maybe
I call BS for all of them. I call BS for all of them. She told the truth.
She told the truth by not telling the truth. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right. So St. Brown or Eckler on FanDuel, they're specifically asking you, Tim, who do you prefer? Obviously, this would be in the utility spots. This is for single entry. Amon-Ra or Eckler. Like it'd be nice to know the rest of the lineup, but who do you prefer in the old vacuum in the Hoover?
Eckler, definitely.
I do as well. Alex says silent reporting is the worst point per dollar play the networks make. Yeah, it's not that important. But has anybody ever said like, wow, it's only ever like if something weird happens, like we note it, but otherwise it's just like it's mostly nonsense. All right, let's take a stand. Who are the plays? Who's going to be the one guy, the stack, the game stack, the ambitious play? This is the one. They're going to clip this for next week for promotions, Tim. No pressure. You got to get this right. The player you need to win all the American dollars is who?
I'm going to go with Aaron Jones.
I like that call.
I mean, that's not that ambitious, but I don't think he's going to be super chalky either.
I'm taking Jalen Waddle. Jalen Waddle is going to be the guy. Hopefully, and we have it in the sports betting streets. I bet is over as far as his totals. I think Cooper Kupp's another one too. I got both those guys. Those are my two. I don't know how off the board they may or may not be. People want to play Hill first. But Crunch Time crew is on layaway. They're on deck now because we're going to be bringing in Ebeimfohr and TJ in just a second. But Bobby, see Aaron Jones and see Jalen Waddle. What do you got?
It's DJ Moore.
Ooh, which means
2 yards, 2 touchdowns.
You want to say the stack, or you just want to say DJ Moore? You want to stack it up?
Yeah, you could throw Fields in there. I like a bunch of other quarterbacks around. Like I like Purdy, I like Goff. There's guys in there that I have interest in as well. But my strongest stance is definitely DJ Moore on the slate. Then probably Devin Achane.
Don Yeezy in chat is telling us, I trust him. It's a good source that Dowdle is going to be active this week. Doesn't mean you can't play Pollard. If you want to play Dowdle, I don't think it's the craziest idea in a large field, but he was questionable. Basically, the only questionable on the slate, with the exception of Lockett. Lockett did not practice much all week. There's a chance he doesn't play. We will not know that 11:30 because that is a late game at around 4-ish or so. But yeah, I'm trying to see if there's anything else in the chat before we segue to Beimfohr and TJ. They should be knocking on the door momentarily. TJ has a different time slot normally, so maybe he doesn't know that he should be coming in the room right now. I don't know. Or maybe there he is. Hold on. He waved and then what was that? Like a false alarm? I'm trying to throw it to TJ. And then
Beimfohr is not here yet.
That's what's going on. All right. Where is Beimfohr? You're supposed to finish strong, and we're just kind of whimpering here to the end. Well, Tim, that wasn't your best play. You were holding it back for this exact situation. Who is the guy that's going to break the slate? If not Aaron Jones, who is it?
Oh man, I don't know. Now you throw me off guard. I just really like that Chargers Green Bay game.
Yeah. Who's your second favorite Packer? Are you playing some Watson, or that's just too gross for you?
I think you can. I mean, I've been off him all year. I think this might be his best chance right here.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard that before. But this is
like
the never again game. If not,
I'm not going to play him. I'm not going to play him with Aaron Jones, though. That's the problem.
Yeah, I don't think you have to do that. You can. It's not the worst idea, but that's probably more of a smaller field stuff. But hey, our time is up. Let's say hello to TJ Zwarych, Erik Beimfohr. Beimfohr, what's going on, dude? No Squirrel. We should mention Squirrel's not here because he's in Miami, king of the beach. Wish him luck. Carlucci as well. Wish both of them luck. But yeah, Erik, you got anything to say as far as the slate? Well, you have a lot to say. You're going to be talking to TJ for the next hour or so, but what's up? Good morning.
Yeah, hopefully I have a few things to say to fill an hour and a half about this slate. But yeah, Squirrel is off because, when there's a live final, naturally Squirrel is going to be there probably near the top by the end of the day. Although I don't know if he's listening, probably not. Last week, he said, I don't know, it's King of the Beach next week. Maybe I'll play Tommy DeVito. And I hope he wasn't being serious about that. But also, he is crazy. And I would not be all that surprised. He probably has a bunch of teams. And there might be he might be the solo Tommy DeVito team. So maybe we can talk him off a ledge. But I like this slate. I kind of like the slates where, some of the air quotes best plays are pretty popular, but there's really, really easy leverage. There's some plays that I think are pretty good, like would be chalk on other slates that are not necessarily chalk today. So I'm pretty excited to see what TJ has to say about it.
His article, Hitting the Nuts, he talked about DTR. So I think there's a chance he plays. I think there's a chance he might. Yeah, I'll see your DeVito and I'll raise you a DTR. I think there's a chance.
That's all his quarterback. That's his quarterback pool, DTR and Tommy DeVito. Yeah.
He was talking about him for deep tournament stuff, and I think he's 1-150 because he snuck in the back door. I think it was the last one in there. So, yeah, wish him luck. Myself and Bobby and Tim, we do appreciate you watching the first portion. Now we're going to yield. You got TJ Zwarych, one of the greatest DFS players in all of Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada, and you got Erik Beimfohr as well. Erik, take it over.
That's a great intro. I'm going to steal that for future shows with TJ. Of course. Thank you, Dean. Thank you to Bobby and Tim as well. Welcome to GPP Final Takes here on RotoGrinders.com. I am, as always, your host, Erik Beimfohr. It's funny. So a little look behind the glass, behind the curtain. I'm weird about pronunciations of names, and I've done a bunch of shows with TJ, and I'm pretty sure before every single time I ask him, because I don't recall coming in, I'm like, TJ, please tell me how to say your name so I don't screw it up. So TJ Zwarych, correct?
Nailed it.
Okay, good. We got it. We nailed it. Joining me, obviously, in place of John Breslin, Squirrel Patrol, while he's off winning all the money as he does. But we're going to be here for the next hour and 15, hour and a half or so to hopefully guide you to win the money. I'm hoping to win the money myself this weekend. As you see at the top of your screen, this is GPP Final Takes, meaning leading up to lock, we're going to walk through kind of everything that you need to know and answer all your questions for tournaments. Of course, if you have a cash game question, we can try to answer it to the best of our ability. Quite frankly, we'll probably lean a lot on the projections, in which, of course, you can get if you subscribe to RotoGrinders, but we won't necessarily go game by game. We won't necessarily go position by position. What we'll try to do is bounce around to all of the hottest button items for the week for tournaments. That will be some games, that will be positions, but it will be kind of a little mismatch of everything that you can get for tournament plays and making your tournament teams. We will try to get to every single one of your questions, post them in the chat, and I will try as hard as I can to hit every single one of them. We may not hit all of them. If we miss them, hang around after we're done. Crunch Time will be here. Those three folks, ladies and gentlemen, will be there to answer any questions that we do not hit. But of course, first, before we dive in, TJ, how are we feeling? It's getting cold where I am. It gets dark. Like, it's going to be dark when like the afternoon games are kicking off. I'm really not liking that. I stayed up late and watched the Vegas F1 race, so we're moving a little slow today. So maybe you're going to have to breathe the fresh air and the energy into this one.
I'm ready. How do I sound now? I was hooked up to my AirPods before instead of my microphone, so
Yep,
should be good to go now. But bringing the energy, excited about this slate. I have some extra entry fees to play with too, because I had a really fun day yesterday. I was producing the MMA show with Mike Brown and Liam Picks fights, and I'm just watching the show. You know, I'm producing, so I'm going through lineup HQ, and Mike had 5 conviction plays in, and you can play 6 players in a UFC lineup. And so I plugged in, bang, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of his conviction plays. And then Liam he wrote up earlier in the week, and they brought it up again on the show, a fighter who was 5% owned as an underdog play that they thought actually might win. And he wins on a first round KO. And so I end up finishing second in my GPPs, won about $3,000 on a $30 team.
Amazing.
And so now I got a little bit of extra excitement for the day today. And this is a fun little slate. I'm excited to dive in.
It's funny you say that, because I had not the world's best, but a fine college football day. For anybody that knows, obviously I do lots of NFL here. I do lots of best ball at our site, Spike Week, but I'm a big college sports junkie. I love college basketball. You can get tons of college basketball picks that I put in over at Scores and Odds, and I love college football. College football DFS is a very cruel game, but I do enjoy it. And I had a fine day in college football, but similar to you, picked up a couple tickets to some contests today that I'm very excited about for NFL. So we will see if we can turn those, same as you, turn a nice day yesterday into a big day today. Before we dive into, every single player, every single specific position, as Luis says, definitely will not forget FanDuel. If I am talking too much DraftKings, because my brain thinks DraftKings, TJ will keep me on track. And you guys, of course, if you have FanDuel specific questions, please bring those as well, and we will make sure to hit those. Tim is way too kind, but it has been a pretty fun start to college basketball season. So we're hoping we can roll that into today. Today, the first thing I want to talk about, TJ, is we have not necessarily a monster slate of injuries and such, but we do have a few, right? We do have a few different injuries. And it's funny because one team seems to stand out the most with injuries. I want to talk about the Houston Texans. So the Houston Texans obviously have CJ Stroud, who, my goodness, we don't have to get off on this side tangent, but if you're the Carolina Panthers, this has to be the most miserable season ever. Not just because you're bad and Bryce Young is bad, but because you could have just sat there and taken CJ Stroud and not given away like 17 draft picks in order to do it. CJ Stroud having not just one of the the best rookie quarterback seasons ever. He's having just a straight up phenomenal quarterback season. Veterans, like the Jets sure wish they had something like CJ Stroud is doing with Zach Wilson, but he's playing great. Tank Dell is great. Dameon Pierce is out. Noah Brown, who has emerged as apparently a superstar wide receiver, is out for them today. Robert Woods is of course back, but I'm not sure that Robert Woods specifically matters, but I do think how we handle the Texans, as weird as it sounds, man, if you would have asked me 2 months ago, if I would have said, yeah, you got to figure out what to do with the Texans in tournaments before you start your lineups. But I do think it is something we have to really think about. Like Devin Singletary is going to be the most popular, give or take the most popular running back on the slate. Tank Dell is going to be one of the most popular wide receivers, but Noah Brown is out. There's Dalton Schultz. There's Nico Collins. Are we playing CJ Stroud, right? Do you play CJ Stroud with Singletary or do you fade him? I think kind of thinking through the Texans also, because on the other side, there are some pretty good plays on the Cardinals and this game looks good. How are you thinking about the Texans and this game and, the Singletary chalk? And let's process all that first.
Do you remember those, rest in peace, Kobe Bryant, those commercials back in the day for Nike? And he would just be like, more this, more that. Then Kanye West would be like, what do you mean? I'm already the best, Kobe Bryant. And he'd be like, more, better, bigger. That's how I'm feeling about this game today. We talked about it on the Blitz show on Saturday as well, where this is just the fastest paced game on the slate by far. I sound like I'm talking basketball, but lots of plays expected in this one. And so I'm just fully game stacking it as much as possible. I did a 5-entry max where I have one Justin Fields team, 2 Strouds, two Kyler Murrays, and those 4 teams are just like full game stacks. So I'm getting to a ton of Singletary. He's my highest owned running back today. I have him at 63%, doubling the field-ish in MME. And then same thing, Tank Dell, I'm going to be trying to double the field. I have about 45% of him today. Trying to get all over Nico Collins, playing a lot of Robert Woods, playing a lot of Dalton Schultz, playing even more Trey McBride. And then like my 2 highest owned receivers are Tank Dell and Rondale Moore today. So I'm planning on just getting as much of this game as physically possible. And then mixing in a lot of James Conner as well. Conner is my 3rd highest owned running back. So if this game busts, it's probably going to be a tough day for me, but if it goes well, then it's going to be a pretty big day.
Yeah, for sure. This is one of those games where, this is, of course, the GPP Final Takes show. Both you and I think, can enjoy a little galaxy braining in tournaments. I think this game specifically is one that I don't want to say like they've given it to us on a platter and we just need to take it and run with it, but sort of. It's never that straightforward. I'm not saying that multiple guys from this game are like a stone cold lock to be in tournament winning lineups, but I just think there are certain times in NFL where guys are maybe a smidge underpriced, but in a really good spot or something like that, right? You're in a Dolphins-Bills game, and it's like, okay, Gabe Davis is 5,800. Sure, he looks great. He has a big ceiling. I get why he's going to be popular, blah, blah, blah. DJ Moore, right? Sometimes will be like, oh my God, like last year, even on the Sam Darnold-led Panthers, you were like, I mean, he's 5,200 and he's going to get 12 targets. It's like, that. But this game is one where I think almost everyone, maybe sans Nico Collins, is underpriced and like underpriced significantly. So like they are so underpriced. The matchup is great. The Cardinals have gotten Kyler Murray back. The Texans have removed multiple pieces. And like sometimes in football, you remove pieces and it's like, yeah, it's not the NBA where we just move the projection around, right? Jaylen Brown is out. It's fine. The Celtics are still going to score 120 points. In NFL, it's not necessarily like that. But in this game specifically, we have removed players who don't really impact the Texans' ability to score points, right? Like Noah Brown has been awesome, and Dameon Pierce is maybe a little bit better than Devin Singletary, but like they're going to score, and it doesn't really matter that those guys are not playing. In my opinion, maybe you think more highly of Noah Brown than I do, but I think
I was going to say, like, I honestly don't even know that Singletary isn't better than Dameon Pierce. Right.
He might just be straight up better, right? And I think Noah Brown is probably better than Robert Woods, but I think Nico Collins is at least just as good, if not better, than Noah Brown. So we're not losing anything, right, talent-wise on the offense. It is a great matchup, and everybody is too cheap. And so it's one of those where we'll talk through some different ways to galaxy brain some stuff. but I think, and I wrote about this in the expert survey, that my plan of attack, similar to you, is more so get overweight the guys in this game and then figure out how to properly leverage my tournament lineups around that. Right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, so if I game stack this with some of the chalky pieces, Tank Dell, Singletary, Hollywood, Trey McBride, whatever, if I do stuff like that, okay, it's not, I'm not loading up Brees and, whatever, Steelers defense, or, I'm just trying to come up with the most popular other. I'm not also then loading up with, Commanders defense and Brees and Brian Robinson. Like, I'm not loading up with the most popular players also right around it. Then when I do that, I can pull some levers, right? I can be like, okay, instead of Debo, if I'm going to play a Niners one-off, don't play Debo, play Ayuk or play Kittle or play, different things like that. And thinking through building my lineups where the leverage and the kind of tournament aspect is going to come outside of this game. Now, you can pull some little levers here in this game, I think. Specifically, Nico Collins is pretty interesting. You mentioned James Conner, who is not going to be like low owned, but I actually be a little surprised if he does come in at 18% here. I personally feel like he might be the guy that gets left behind a smidge here, but I just think that my overall, I wanted to start here because I was curious if you had this same take, but we're very much on the same page that I'm not like getting super galaxy brain with this game specifically. I'm going to attack this game. I'm going to get overweight this game, even the really chalky pieces, but then figure out how to still make a really good tournament lineup, right? That can beat however many thousand of people that I'm trying to beat around the really good plays from this game. Cause they're just, it's too good. It's been served on a platter to me.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And just kind of as we're going through this, I want to touch on this at the start of the show as Luis is asking favorite wide receivers on FanDuel. Obviously, we'll touch on wide receivers later, but it's really not that different between the two sites today. Like my favorite players on DraftKings are also my favorite players on FanDuel today. Like they're more expensive on FanDuel, but it's also a little bit easier to make some lineups over there. The quarterbacks I like on FanDuel are the same as the quarterbacks I like on DraftKings. There's really not that many differences today. And so I want to kind of touch on that as we go through. When there is a huge difference on pricing and somebody's like a good play on one site and not a good play on the other site, we'll make sure to address that. But for the most part, I think we can kind of go and like, if we like a game, if we like a play, it's pretty much the same on both the sites today, because while the prices specifically are different, the ratios are pretty similar.
Yep. I think that is totally spot on. Really quickly, I did just want to, not to like belabor this game and belabor some of the points in this game, but I can't really figure out why Tank Dell's price doesn't go up on either site. If we just look over the course of the entire season, which includes the very, very, very beginning of the season when actually Noah Brown was starting over Tank Dell. Tank was playing at the beginning. It wasn't like he was literally not playing, but he was actually a little bit more of a rotational player at the beginning. He actually last week played the most snaps on the team at wide receiver. Obviously had 14 targets without Nico, which is kind of crazy. But over the course of the season for the Texans, just some quick numbers on Tank Dell. 70% of snaps for the collective portion of the season, 32% of the team air yards, a 21% target share, second on the team in red zone targets with 3 end zone targets, like getting tons of air yards, getting used down the field, getting used short to move the chains, getting used all over the place. And he's been ascending over the course of the entire season. He is just 5,900 on DraftKings. He's like when we saw Puka emerge at the beginning of the season, it was like, okay, Puka went from 3K to like whatever 5K to, oh my God, he's 8K. It's like Tank. The same thing should be happening for Tank Dell. He started cheap. He moved up after some big games. He should be up there with those Pukas and all of those guys. And he's not. He is one of the best fantasy wide receivers in the entire league in a great matchup with the Arizona Cardinals. And he's 5,900 and he's only 7,000 on FanDuel. I understand wide receiver scoring can be high variance or whatever, but like I said, I can find ways to create leverage and all that around Tank Dell. Like I don't feel the need to be like, oh, he's mega chalk, I have to fade him, because I actually think it's possible he comes in what I would call under-owned. I try to say this all the time. It's like, it's not just about are you high owned or low owned. It's are you under owned or over owned, right? It's an efficiency of ownership. And I don't personally think 21% on FanDuel at 7K is over-owned at all. If anything, I would say it's under-owned for Tank Dell. So to your point about getting overweight those guys, I do think I'll be overweight those guys. Before we move on, I want to talk about the Arizona side. But first, if you had to pick Singletary versus the passing game, or how to like one lineup, and you said, am I playing like Stroud stack or Stroud double stack, or am I playing Singletary, or am I playing like Singletary and Tank? How are you, like, if you had to prioritize, say, the 4 big Texans, how would you do that?
Dell and Singletary would be my primary guys on the Texans side of things, and then my favorite way to run it back would be Trey McBride and Rondale Moore. You get those 4 players from that game, even if you don't have the quarterbacks. Like Bobby brought up at the end of last show the same play that I called as like my on the Blitz show as like my favorite break the slate type play, and it was DJ Moore. And I love that play today. So you just run. You don't even have to play Kyler or Stroud. You run DJ Moore and Justin Fields today alongside Dell and Singletary, McBride, and Rondale Moore. Maybe you want to get a little bit more correlation, so you go Komet instead of McBride to get a little lower owned. But those are the 4 from the game that I'm targeting the most: McBride and Moore on the Arizona side of things, and then Dell and Singletary on the Houston side. I probably still will be like close to overweight on somebody like a Nico Collins. I'm trying to see how much Collins I have right now. I have like, maybe I got to refresh here. Is Collins really projecting to be like 4 or 5% owned today?
Yeah, that was gonna be one of the last things I bring up, where it's like, I know we're sitting here saying, you know, keep it simple, don't do anything crazy, but I feel like Nico Collins at 4%, or I think he was 6% on DraftKings, that feels like an exploitable spot to me. I don't think he should be that low owned.
Yeah, so then I'm significantly overweight on him because I have 15% Nico Collins today. I think I'm also going to be pretty overweight. Like, I have 25% Marquise Brown. I don't care that he sucked last game. Kyler is back, and now Michael Wilson's gone too. Great spot for Marquise Brown, so I'm doubling the field on him too. Robert Woods, I have about 20% of as well, nice and cheap. Now that we are likely not going to get JSN. Like, JSN, I think, is still fine, but we're likely not going to get him in as crazy of a spot without Lockett. Yep. We don't get Jalen Guyton anymore. He's out. We don't get Wilson anymore. He's out. Now that Robert Woods is in, I think he's a nice, cheap receiver that we can kind of sub in for those ones. On FanDuel, where Dell and Collins are almost the same price, I still would prioritize Dell, but I think Collins even makes just like a great 1-for-1 pivot. If the rest of your lineup is pretty chalky, you just play Collins instead. And I honestly don't even think it's stupid. I don't think it's that crazy to mix in a little bit of Greg Dortch in your lineups as well. Flat $3K on DraftKings, and on FanDuel, even better value at $4,300. It's difficult to find a receiver who's going to play some snaps at $4,300, and Dortch should be the wide receiver 3 in this offense. Like, technically 4 because McBride will be ahead of him, but he should be on the field for all of the 3 receiver sets. So I don't think it's crazy to play him either.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what they do with that third wide receiver spot, because if they play Dortch, they are going to have this is like a little league size offense with Kyler, you know, being 5'8" or whatever Kyler is. Hollywood is like 5'9", 5'10". Rondale is 5'7". I think Dortch is 5'7". And then there will be Trey McBride will look like Wembanyama out there amongst all those little guys if they play all of them. So I'm just interested to see what they do there. A totally good point or comment or whatever from Jason says the Cardinals have been really good against the pass lately. So I'm not sure why everybody is talking up the Texans passing attack. Their weakness is their run defense. Couple quick things. Their weakness, they definitely are weak against the run. I locked Bijan last week, which was like fine. But what I will say is, here's this: if we do need a little bit of context sometimes to, like, the NFL is a very funny game of when we attach ourselves to small samples and we ignore the context of they've been good against this, right? That's why we'll run into when we talk about the Raiders and all that later. Josh Jacobs looks great projection wise in tournaments or whatever, and the Raiders have won 2 in a row against the Giants and the Jets. And so taking conclusions from what has happened against the Giants and the Jets and trying to apply them in a game against the Dolphins is probably not going to work really well for the Cardinals. just played the Falcons with Taylor Heineke, who also got hurt in the middle of that game. They did not they only attempted 21 passes in that game. So I'm not sold that was like, oh my God, the Cardinals pass defense is amazing. They just played the Falcons, and that's what the Falcons do, especially with Taylor Heineke at quarterback. Before that, the Browns. I believe that was Browns without Deshaun Watson in that game. Only threw 30 pass attempts, PJ Walker. And even then, 30 pass attempts, 213 yards, 2 touchdowns. The Ravens game, I'll shout them out a little bit for the Ravens game, holding Lamar in check a smidge. And then we'll talk about the Seahawks later. The Seahawks pass game, I don't know what's going on. Other than like the 2-minute drill, it's totally broken. They can't throw on anybody. They threw for almost 10 yards per attempt. They only threw it 24 times against the Cardinals, and they threw for 200 yards. Like, giving up 10 yards per attempt is not great, right? The same thing happened against the Rams, 10 yards per attempt against the Rams. Joe Burrow lit them up. Daniel Jones threw for 312 yards against this defense. I'm not saying that you don't want to attack their run defense, but I am saying don't run away from the Houston Texans passing offense, who is woefully underpriced and is definitely going to put up some points today just because, the Falcons didn't throw all over these guys. If you want to prioritize Singletary a little bit more, I have zero problems with that. Absolutely zero problems. But I would say that Stroud and this offense is not going to get shut down by the Arizona Cardinals pass defense just because they've had a couple of good games. That's kind of what I would add. There.
Well, I
Anything
think you
else?
got to take it one further. You look at it over the course of a season, the Cardinals suck. And so they're always losing. And therefore, teams are running the ball against them because they're ahead and they're running the clock. They're not throwing the ball because they're winning. And they're up by 3 touchdowns and they don't need to. And so I think that plays a lot into it as well. Just this, like you had mentioned, the sheer volume of just getting ran on all the time because other teams are just going, all right, well, we got 3 touchdowns. They're not going to score 3 touchdowns. And so let's run the ball.
Yep. And I will say, in terms of the pass, of course, Tank Dell is not sneaking by anybody, but we just talked about if everybody's playing Singletary and Tank Dell, it's like I can just take it one tiny little step further. You mentioned CJ Stroud is one of your highest owned, your quarterbacks, way overweight on Nico Collins. I think Dalton Schultz, right? Probably my 2 favorite tight ends on the whole slate are both in that game. Dalton Schultz running a route on basically every pass snap now without Noah Brown. I suspect that Nico Collins, who had been a smidge more rotational before he got hurt, I suspect he's going to run a route on nearly every single pass route. On the other side, like, you can just get into this Tampa Bay Bucksian type of game that we saw a couple weeks ago with the Texans, where it's like, I know where the ball is going on both sides. There's basically 3 dudes on each side, right? I guess technically 4 on Arizona, 3 or 4 guys on each side. The quarterbacks are both priced really well. If we just get a couple of big plays going back and forth, like, these are the tournament games that you dream of, right? And so it's just like really too good for me to pass up. I think there's a ton of ways to go. I'm not going to mock anybody for playing this game any single possible way. One-offs, pass games, run games, whatever. I think that they're all good, but I do think that this game in particular is a very clear standout amongst the rest. I did just want to mention I'm definitely, still working through my specific teams. I'm more of a single entry, 3 entry max. And Donnie, I see your question. We'll hit that in just a second. I can't get away from Hollywood Brown. It's so hard for me not to click Hollywood Brown. Like you mentioned, without Michael Wilson, I think that he played 100% of snaps last week. So he ran every route, obviously. It didn't pop for him. And the Cardinals were like getting a little stuck in the mud in the first half and kind of the middle of the game. Kyler missed Hollywood on the easiest walk-in touchdown he ever should have had last week. Just barely overthrew him. Feels like a recurring theme for Hollywood Brown over the course of his career. But if you recall at the beginning of last season, right, they still had DeAndre Hopkins. When Hopkins was out, he was suspended to start last year, Hollywood was like setting the world on fire. Target share, air yard share, actual fantasy points, everything. And I do really want to attack this Texans defense in general, but of course through the air. And I think that the Texans are going to score, right? So the Cardinals, as you mentioned, maybe the Texans are playing from ahead, which means the Cardinals are going to be throwing. I think big games are coming for Hollywood. And so I love McBride, obviously, and I really like Rondale and Connor, whatever. But I think that I wouldn't just say, oh, look, he only had 5 targets last week. Rondale had 8, let's not tie ourselves to just that one game, similar to how we shouldn't tie ourselves to, the Cardinals run defense is where we want to go and avoid the Texans passing offense. Shout out to Alex. Hollywood is 5'9". So I'm sorry if I said 5'8". I don't want to slight those guys,
Would I be the tallest receiver on their team today? So I was the shortest receiver on my high school team. I was a receiver in high school. I beefed up a little bit in college, but I was a receiver in high school, played basketball as well, and I was in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, at my high school of 350 kids, which, for what it's worth, we won the provincial championship. We were awesome. But I was the shortest receiver we'd run a 4-receiver set, and our other slot, so we'd kind of, in Canada, because there's one more player on the field. For Canadian football, so you run 2 slots and 2 wideouts. I was one of the slots. The other one was 6'3", and then the 2 guys on the outside, I think, were 6'1" and 6'2". And so I'm 5'10", and I was by far the shortest on my high school team. I would be the tallest wide receiver on the Arizona Cardinals today.
Just the second, you and James Conner would feel like, Trey McBride is Wembanyama, and you're Keldon Johnson or whatever, and these other guys, even Kyler, right, is a 5'9" or whatever. Just a very interesting, funny looking Cardinals offense. I will derail everybody and give a shout out to someone that absolutely nobody knows, but my best friend coaches a high school football team, and they won in the semifinals yesterday. They're headed to the state championship game next week here in Illinois. Shout out Camp Point Central High School in Illinois. So fun times all around. Hopefully we can get our own dubs today on the DFS slate. Sorry, I got confused. Producer Steve saying Eric, and I forgot it's this Eric McKinnon season. Yeah, no Chiefs. Yeah. No Chiefs.
Pacheco chalk, biggest bust on the slate. Why would Pacheco be chalk? He is.
I
not
hope Pacheco's
on the slate.
Yeah, that would be really good for us if Pacheco is going to be chalk today. But I mentioned keep your questions coming. Donnie says in single entry, 3 entry max, if everyone is paying up for CMC and Tyreek, how interested are you in Eckler Cup? This is interesting. We can pivot kind of to the high end, because we spent a ton of time talking about Texans Cardinals, and there's really nobody on the high end. That's why that game is so appealing. Everybody's, 5K ish or less. So if we're going to have that savings, are you going to use it for Tyreek? Are you going to use it for CMC? What about the Eckler and Cup pivots, or just like generally at the high end of this slate? How are you kind of processing the fact that, we can get 1 or 2 of these guys if we are loading up on Singletary, Tank Dell, right, Rondale, etc.
Yeah, interestingly enough, I found myself not getting too much CMC anytime I was using the optimizer for MME stuff. And then I found myself getting to a lot of him anytime I was hand building, because I would just do my cheap game stacks and then be like, look at all this salary, Christian McCaffrey. And so I found that very interesting. In my 150 set, I have 8% Christian McCaffrey, but then in all the lineups I hand built, I think I have him in like 30 to 40% of them. And then Tyreek Hill is going to be my second highest owned receiver. I hate when a random receiver gets added into the player pool, and so you don't have any cap set on them, and then they end up in like 40% of your lineup. So I'm going to have to redo that, because right now I have 40% Andre Bacchiella. And I don't want that. But I am getting to a lot of Tyreek and Christian McCaffrey today. But I'm also playing a lot of lineups, so I'm definitely not fading them by any means. But I love the Cooper Kupp call, and I love the Austin Eckler call as well. I would put kind of CMC and Tyreek in tier 1, and then my tier 2 of spend ups would be Amon-Ra St. Brown, Austin Eckler, and Cooper Kupp. I think Kupp is a phenomenal tournament play today. With he's coming in at super low ownership, and Matthew Stafford is back, so he could very reasonably just be 17 target Cooper Kupp again today and be by far the highest scoring receiver on the slate. So I think that's a very, very good tournament call. I have them in kind of my tier 2 of spend ups. St. Brown, Eckler, and Kupp are kind of how I would rank the group, putting them above everybody else. I have just like, I'm not getting to any Stephon Diggs today outside of just like a couple lineups with Josh Allen and MME stuff, but still very little there. I'm not really getting to all that many spend ups outside of those 5 guys. Some Keenan Allen too, but not all that much.
I like that. Yeah. So a couple of quick things. One, we mentioned, the differences between FanDuel and DraftKings, and I totally agree with you. There isn't a massive amount of differences, but on Cooper Kupp specifically, I did just want to bring up, he's basically the same price on both sites. And so you might say, oh, well, that means there's no differences. That actually means that on FanDuel, he's much more appealing, that if he's the same price on DraftKings with a lower salary cap and also the nuances of the pricing there. It's just easier to play Cooper Kupp on FanDuel. I think he's a great play on both sites. I think he's an interesting one where he hasn't popped in such a long time now. But he was hurt, obviously. Stafford got hurt. They had a couple of tough matchups. Like, you play the Cowboys and you get bludgeoned and Stafford gets hurt. Like, that's just what happens sometimes. He does, of course, have Puka Nacua now, who I think can generate a little bit more volume than, say, the guys that played alongside him in the past. But I think for this specific matchup, like, it is totally wheels up Cooper Kupp. He's been playing more in the slot than Puka has since Kupp returned. And I think that's where he really is at his best anyway. But that's also where you absolutely want to attack this Seahawks defense. I know that they haven't really shut people down or certainly not produced monster fantasy results, but the Seahawks have a crazy talented defense. They have tons of talent on their defense. And what I think they're best at, they have two young corners who are just outstanding on the outsides, and that shows up in the data as well. They really don't give up anything to outside wide receivers. Nope. Like, if you saw last week, Sam Howell got there and Washington, scored quite a few points. Did you see what Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson did? Absolutely nothing. Jahan Dotson bageled 0, absolutely nothing. And I think McVay with Stafford back now, I mean, he cooked up this defense in week 1 without Kupp. I think he's probably got a good idea of how to attack this defense, having played against them for so long. I think it's one of those where Kupp's got to get there with volume. And so, that's always A, that's good. But B, it's also a little bit tricky sometimes to navigate, because I don't know how many 40-yard, 50-yard touchdowns are going to be available for a team against the Seahawks. But Kupp could just, as you said, 15 catches for 130 yards and a touchdown or something from Cooper Kupp here. And there's just not that many guys that can do that kind of stuff. We love Hollywood and we love Tank and all that kind of stuff. For them, you're hoping for a big splash play or something. They can't do 15 catches. That's Kupp, that's Keenan, that's Tyreek, that's those guys are in a tier of their own.
And that's Rondale Moore today, because he's going to have 10 catches.
That's college Rondale Moore. That's all Rondale Moore did at Purdue. Shout out to him. If anybody go back and watch Rondale Moore squat. He is a mutant. That dude, he squats 750 pounds or something like that. He was breaking squat records. He's 5'7", but he is built like a, he's like Jalen
Shortness helps for squatting. That was always when I was doing some powerlifting stuff back in the day, being sub 6 feet. That does help.
I'm a terrible squatter. Horrible. I'm not that tall. I'm 6 foot, but I'm it's lanky.
Yeah.
I stand no chance squatting. Donnie asks, while we were kind of talking about,
I could put up 500 back in the day, or I don't know if I ever
impressive.
hit 500, but I think I hit 490 something would have been the top I did.
That's an impressive. Here you come for tournament takes, and you're going to get Rondale Moore squat clips, and Saskatchewan high school football and Central Illinois high school football. But Donnie asked in this game, because I do think this game is interesting, and I'm glad Donnie brought it up. He does also hit home with me. Kupp and JSN. If Lockett misses, tell me I can play JSN. I know you love him. I do love JSN. He was a heavily drafted guy for me during the best ball season. What I will say is we definitely got the reports that Tyler Lockett is expected to play. Seattle's very funny with their practice stuff. A lot of the times Lockett and Metcalf don't even practice all week, and they're not even in question to play. Supposedly that's what's going on with Lockett. So I'm pretty lukewarm actually on the Seattle guys. I was much higher on both Metcalf and Lockett or Metcalf and JSN throughout the course of this week. I don't think they are out of play by any stretch of the imagination. They're priced fine. They definitely have upside. That game is reasonably appealing. I'm not scared of the Rams defense, but I'm prioritizing those Texans and Cardinals guys, possibly the 49ers, maybe some of the superstar spend ups that we'll talk about as well. So they seem to be just kind of falling through the cracks a little bit for me as like a single entry, 3-entry max type player, but they're not out of play. What do you think about the Seattle guys?
Basically word for word what you said as well. I don't think they're out of play, and Metcalf is the one I'm getting to the most now. But like, doesn't this just feel like a game where, you know, Walker's going to have 75 yards, Metcalf will have 75 yards, JSN will have 50. One of them will get it. Lockett will have 60. One of them will get a touchdown, maybe two of them. We don't really know who though. So I took JSN out just because we have so many cheap receivers. I like it better. But I think he's fine. And then Lockett, I'm not getting to just in case he re-aggravates something. And we have so many great receivers today. I'm fine putting the X on him. But Metcalf, I am still getting to just because he's been getting more targets lately. And then he's the type of guy that he can break any slate, any matchup because he is an absolute tank. And so he's somebody that I never X out of my pool in GPPs.
Yep, I've been playing lots of DK Metcalf, lots of Sklansky bucks over the course of the first 3 months of the season with Metcalf. Like you said, with all the targets, he still leads the NFL in end zone targets. He's a big play threat. They are a mess on offense, to be frank about it. They got there at the very end. That is great. They got there at the very end as my dog is chilling, sleeping back here behind me. I'm not trying to draw too much from even just a small sample of several games, but I'm genuinely worried about the Seahawks offense. I can't figure out what's going on. Like I said, I stacked them last week. I played Geno, Metcalf, and I can't figure out exactly what's going wrong. They look like the opposite of the team last year, and they're more talented. All they did was add talent on offense, a first-round wide receiver, a second-round running back, some offensive linemen, and they've gotten worse. Geno seems to have regressed a little bit. Doesn't mean you can't play them. Like you said, I love DK Metcalf for tournaments just about every week. I would not X him out, but I'm less excited about that game and that team than I was, say, earlier in the week, right? Like when you remove Noah Brown, when you remove Michael Wilson, when you remove Damian Pierce and all these other guys, there's just, you put Justin Fields back in. You mentioned DJ Moore. You put Fields back in there. It just like really beefs up some of the wide receivers in these other games. We'll talk about the Dolphins in a second. You have Dolphins to figure out, right? There's just a lot of good wide receiver plays that I'm not really prioritizing Seattle too much. We just talked some about the superstars. A good question from I don't know how to say your Otaxitis. Otax. We'll call you Otax. Otax. You're on mute. Otax says.
I'm assuming it's Otis. Otis is probably the first name, but shout out to them because they're in the Twitch chat right now. I always forget that we're live on Twitch too because everybody shows up on YouTube, but I stream on Twitch all the time for Agents of Fandom, so I popped in there and answered his question on Twitch too. But he's already playing Kyler Murray and Rondale Moore, and so Kyler Murray and Marquise Brown. And so to me, this touches on what we talked about at the start of the episode, the Kobe Bryant commercial. More of this game, full game stack, because so many people, especially the people who are putting like their cash game in a single entry in single entry stuff, they'll have somebody like Kyler Murray with one of these receivers. I'm playing three. I'm playing Trey McBride, Rondale Moore, Marquise Brown, all in the same lineup with Kyler Murray, because if Kyler Murray throws 2 touchdown passes and maybe like doesn't rush for anything crazy, I'm not winning anyways. If he throws for 4, I want to make sure that I'm ahead of all the other people who have Kyler Murray today. And so I want all the people he's throwing them to. And so I want to play Moore, McBride, and Marquise Brown all in the same lineup, hoping that Rondale Moore has 10 catches for 80 yards. Marquise Brown has 5 catches for 125 and a touchdown. And then Trey McBride has 6 catches for 80 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then if that happens, I'm winning a GPP today. And so because for him to throw that much, it probably also meant that Houston was scoring. And I have Singletary and Dell, or Singletary and Nico Collins, or Singletary and Robert Woods. I want to like full on game stack it. Shout out to David Greer in chat bringing up a great point. Where are all the likes today? We got 700 people watching. I think we might have to take like a little hiatus on YouTube QQs until people hit the like button, because that's free. Like button is free. So definitely hit that like button, and then we'll the more likes we get, the more QQs we'll take from the chat.
There you go. I like it. While we're doing that, I'm going to run down. We're starting to get actives and inactives rolling in. A couple actually kind of interesting ones that I don't want to say I wasn't expecting, but that I haven't necessarily thought through everything about them. So Michael Wilson is, of course, inactive. We already knew that Dameon Pierce and Noah Brown were out. Pat Freiermuth is officially active. I don't really want to talk about him, but I know he's 2,500 on DraftKings. Actually, we'll talk about it really quick because I want to get it out of the way because someone might ask. I understand he's 2,500. He probably deserves to be 2,500. That game, I will, if any play in that game is in the tournament winning optimal lineups other than one of the two defenses, I will eat this hat next week. Like I don't see it. I'm not interested in Pat. There are other tight ends that are great plays that I like. I would rather punt with Michael Mayer. If I'm going to punt, give me the young rookie on a team who's going to have to throw against the Dolphins rather than that absolute train wreck of a game. I know Pat Freiermuth is probably more talented than 2,500, but when has he shown it? Like, when's the last time he showed for fantasy that we want to play Pat Freiermuth against probably the best defense in the NFL? Not for me, but I certainly understand it. I just wanted to hit him. Are you playing any Freiermuth before I hit some of these other actives?
No, absolutely not.
Okay. Noah Brown. Yes. Shannon in the chat says Noah Brown is officially inactive. Zay Jones. This is an interesting one. Zay Jones is active. Real roller coaster of a last while for old Zay Jones. Hasn't played in, 5 weeks or something like that. Has had a knee issue. Came back to practice this week, I think mostly on a limited basis. Also got arrested earlier in this week, which didn't seem great, but he is apparently going to play today. I do think he's like, I don't know how to phrase this, but I would toss him into my like cheap wide receiver pool as someone I would start to consider now. I actually did not expect that he was going to play. So I am a little bit thrown off. He's 4,100 on DraftKings. He has only played 2 games this year. I get it, but or 3 games this year. He actually had 6 targets against the Chiefs and did not record a catch. That's impressive. But I think he's very much in play against a leaky Titans pass defense. So I did just want to I just want to mention Zay Jones. Antonio Gibson, a big one. Officially inactive for the Washington Commanders. Donta Foreman is officially active. Rico Dowdle is officially active. I know that doesn't seem like a big deal, but it was possible that gave a nice little boost to Tony Pollard. That is so far all the main ones that I am seeing. Let's talk about Antonio Gibson because he's the biggest one, I think, there on that little list. You have Washington, the Fighting Sam Howells, as I would like to call them, facing Tommy DeVito and the Giants, who are clearly a train wreck. I think targeting against the Giants is going to be a fruitful thing to do down the stretch here. And we have probably Brian Robinson taking over a little more share of the backfield. Chris Rodriguez should step up into the running back 2 spot, but Rodriguez is more similar to Brian Robinson in that he's kind of an in-between the tackles grinder. And so in a weird way, we might remove a few carries from Brian Robinson, but he's going to probably pick up some of the pass game work that Antonio Gibson has had because that's where Gibson really thrives. So in a weird way, I think it's actually better for Robinson that he's going to lose maybe some carries because he's going to pick up some catches. How are you processing Washington? Like, how are you treating Washington today? Because I think if the Giants can push back at all, Howell looks really good in tournaments. If they don't push back, then Brian Robinson looks pretty good in tournaments. So what do you think about Washington today?
So I like everything about Washington today, except for, let me say, I don't understand how the Washington defense is wildly chalk. That to me just feels stupid. I get it's the Giants, but they're just going to give Saquon Barkley the ball all the time. Tommy DeVito is going to throw some incredibly short passes, and the Washington Commanders defense just got rid of their 2 best defensive playmakers. So I don't understand the Washington chalk today, especially on DraftKings. They're extra chalky. So I'm out on that side of things. But for the offense, I love Brian Robinson. He's my second highest owned running back today. I got him in nearly half of my lineups. I just have a little bit more Singletary than Robinson, but Robinson is the number 2 for me at the running back position. I have way more of the 2 of them than anybody else today. And then in the passing game, I'm basically just using the receivers, Samuel, McLaurin, a touch of Dotson, and then Logan Thomas as well. I'm only using them in Sam Howell stacks. And so I do like myself a Howell stack today. But I'm not really playing these guys on their own. I just like them because Howell himself is going under-owned. And so because of that, I would like to get a decent amount of the Washington stacks today, pair them with Howell because he's coming in at like 5% owned right now. And we know he has a ceiling. We know he throws it a ton. So I'm getting to Brian Robinson the most. He's in almost half my lineups. But I also am trying to get overweight on Sam Howell stacks as well.
This is one that I'm glad we got to because I find it to fall into the category that we talked about at the beginning, where when I'm when I'm taking that stance on Texans Cardinals and I'm not avoiding any of the popular plays from that game, I love Brian Robinson. I'm certainly very interested in playing Brian Robinson, but I keep toying with the idea of moving away from a pretty popular Brian Robinson. And trust me, he should be very popular, in my opinion, in this spot. At 5,800, especially on DraftKings, I'm going to switch over to DraftKings here. I feel like I can get a little funky and use Howell, still load up on my Cardinals game, use Howell instead of Brian Robinson, and then get to, a running back that's a little bit lower owned. You mentioned like I can get up to Christian McCaffrey if I want, right? And it's like 12% Christian McCaffrey, or let's see, 16% Brian Robinson. And then I can get, like you said, 5% Sam Howell. I had to scroll way down to get to Howell, right? Howell projects for 20 points at 6K, and he's 5%, and he's 5% owned against the Giants. And I really, really like Brian Robinson. He's a priority for me when I start to hand build the team. But from a leverage perspective, I feel like Howell at quarterback and then getting away from Brian Robinson when I'm like actively seeking out the leverage when I'm playing Tank and Hollywood and McBride and those guys is something I'm definitely toying with, because the Giants pass defense, I mean, the defense is bad all around, but whoa, buddy. Wow. What Dak did to them, what teams are doing to this Giants pass defense. Adoree Jackson is out. I know that doesn't seem like a big deal, but he's their best corner and they don't have it. He's not that good anyway. they're down to like some really, really bad players on their defense. And I think Washington knows where their bread is buttered on offense. And they've made this crazy shift. They are the highest pass rate team in the NFL. Like, it's not close. Like, they are throwing on, I think they ran it 6 times in the first half last week, and they were winning. They were winning the whole game, and they were absolutely not running the ball, right? And you could argue, like, you might say, oh, well, they know they're trying to keep up with the Seahawks. If you want to attack the Seahawks, you might actually want to do it on the ground. And they just, nope. We win throwing the ball with Sam Howell. And so, like, if we expect they're going to score points, and we expect that, like, they are going to continue to do the thing they've done for 10 weeks. I don't know. I think Howell could possibly be the most under-owned quarterback on this entire slate. And I'm not saying B-Rob is the most over-owned running back, because I definitely don't think that's true. But I think that leverage play makes a lot of sense. I also don't think you have to play a wide receiver with Sam Howell. I'm interested in it. I think Terry McLaurin is my favorite, but I'm certainly biased because I'm a big Sam Howell guy. But that's one of those leverage spots that kind of has jumped out to me. It's like, if I'm playing Tank and Hollywood and Trey and stuff, I got to look for, right. I want to pivot off of Brees. It's like, what am I going to do? Am I going to play Zach Wilson? Like, no, thank you. I'm not playing Zach Wilson. So I got to find some leverage somewhere. And the Washington pass game is one that definitely stands out to me. Did you mention, I know you talked through it, but did you mention how much or if any of a Howell you're playing?
Yeah, so I'll be doubling the field. I got about 10% Howell today. Let me take it one further for you. And I would say in that lineup, don't pay up for Christian McCaffrey. Settle a little lower, pay up somewhere else, and mix in some Saquon Barkley. Because I saw somebody else asking about him in chat. We have a chalk Washington defense today. Get some added leverage to it as well with Saquon Barkley, who is going to be involved in the pass game. He's going to be involved in the run game. Washington's defense is terrible. He's actually my 4th highest owned running back today. I'm going super chalky up top. It's Singletary, Robinson, and James Conner. But then my number 4 guy who I have in 15% of my lineups is Saquon Barkley. And so I absolutely love him in tournaments today. This Washington defense sucks. Yes, the Giants are probably going to lose this game, and the game script will not line up for a prototypical starting running back, but we know that they'll pepper him with 8-10 targets if they need to in this game, especially with DeVito, because DeVito is not going to be throwing the ball downfield. So I really like Saquon Barkley in tournaments today.
That's a really, really good call. I love, like we were just talking about I was just bringing up the leverage, and you took it to exactly where it should have been taken to. I'm a little upset with myself that I didn't even come up with this, but it's absolutely spot on, right? So Brian Robinson. Who are people playing from this game? Brian Robinson and the Washington defense. So who do I want to leverage off of, especially in like Tank Dell type lineups, right? If I got the stack of that game, it's like, well, I want to leverage off Robinson and Washington. So how do I do it? Well, Howell is obviously the leverage off of Brian Robinson, or a receiver if you don't want to play Howell. And then how do I leverage off of Washington? It's like, I guess we should talk about Darius Slayton or something like that, but like I don't really feel the need to do Darius Slayton. I can just do Saquon Barkley, right?
As we speak, I'm building another Howell team.
As you were talking, I'm like, yeah. How do I get this Howell team in here? I will say, I also don't think it's entirely crazy to play one of the Giants wide receivers. It's not good. But what I will say is, I believe Jalen Hyatt's in our projections. I thought he was ruled out.
I thought they're expecting him to play, if I'm not mistaken.
Let me just double check so I don't misspeak. Jalen Hyatt. Oh yeah, I'm an idiot. Ignore me. Never mind. With Hyatt in, please God, don't play any of these guys. Ignore me. But Saquon, I think looks pretty interesting. Ken Walker definitely did not get there. Certainly not in a big way, and he really, really luck boxed. He had a 65-yard touchdown catch, I think it was, on just a little check down where he did Ken Walker things and took it to the house. But I think Washington is a defense that we want to continue to attack. Yeah. So Ken Walker had 19 carries for 63 yards and 1 catch for 64 yards and a touchdown. But I think Washington has been such a big pass funnel for such a long time, but that's not necessarily the case anymore. I do still think we would generally want to attack them through the air more than on the ground. But there's no Montez Sweat. There's no Chase Young up front. They're much worse than they've been for the last couple of seasons. I think generally speaking, you can just fire up anybody against this defense. And as you said, Saquon is going to get as much work as Saquon can handle. And he's leverage off of Washington. He's obviously going to be low owned leverage off of other running backs. So I think he makes a ton of sense. In particular, one player who, a great question from Donnie, that he would be leverage off of, that we absolutely have to talk about, and you have to talk about every single week, is Tony Pollard. What are you doing with 6,600 on DraftKings and a very nice 6,900 Tony Pollard on FanDuel? I have a couple of strong takes about this one, but I'm curious what you think about Tony Pollard today.
I'm underweight significantly. And to quote our guy, Butthole Jenkins, I think I feel it in my plums that Pollard's actually going to score a touchdown today. Like, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just gas. I don't know. But I think I feel like Tony Pollard's going to score a touchdown today. So I'm wary of this being heavily underweight, but I'm just going to, I talked about this in the FanDuel Friday short. I'm just going to keep playing Dak and the passing offense, because if anybody's going to throw it as close to as much as Washington right now, it's the Dallas Cowboys.
Yep.
And so I am underweight on the Tony Pollard, and it brings me fear in my plums.
It definitely does. Okay. I'm going to provide, I'm actually basically agreeing with you that Pollard is the most polarizing, to Donnie's question. Pollard is definitely the most polarizing player in all of the NFL right now from a DFS perspective. He's the most polarizing player on this slate to me. I know Carolina has been a little bit better over the last little while in run defense, but I don't buy that. I'm believing, kind of similar to the Cardinals defense, I'm believing in the long-term sample that this is just a bad defense. They've been bad against the run. They have the same players that they had before against the run. Here's my narrative street take on it is I feel it in my plums as well. I don't know if that's a narrative, but I agree with you. But here's a CeeDee Lamb quote. And again, I'll take all these things with a grain of salt. You don't have to believe this kind of stuff in the way that I believe it. But CeeDee Lamb via Ed Werder says, with my explosion and with Brandon Cooks coming along, we're about to get TP going. TP obviously being Tony Pollard. I don't feel like CeeDee Lamb is the kind of a guy, like if you watch CeeDee Lamb play, I think he would prefer it if Tony Pollard never touched the ball and he got the ball like 35 times. You know, like you watch CDA, he's always open because he's absolutely unbelievable. But B, you could see like even then he's getting like 18 targets and he's still like getting mad when he doesn't get targeted. Because like, I mean, if you remember back on draft night, CD had 2 phones. This dude is a funny fella. CD's sitting on the couch at home with 2 phones in his hands, and his girlfriend was trying to get his one phone from him, and he's like slapping her hand away. That's the CeeDee Lamb we're talking about here. That's great. That's the CeeDee Lamb wouldn't even let his girlfriend touch his phone on draft night. He doesn't want anybody else getting the ball on game days, right? And he just now came out.
I don't know if that's because of wanting the ball. I bet you that's because there was some incriminating evidence for him in his relationship.
That is definitely true. And he certainly didn't want to get outed on that on ESPN on draft night, right? When that happens. But point being, I'm making a very silly point, but I think there are certain, like there's tons of BS in like coach speak and player quotes and all that kind of stuff. I do believe, especially in a game against the Panthers, the passing offense is just clicking on all cylinders for Dallas, that there's not a lot of reason for him to come out and say, we need to get Tony Pollard going. He could come out and say, yeah, dude, we're just going to hang 50 on everybody throwing the ball. Like they can't stop us. They can't stop me. And they can't. Nobody can. But I believe that this is the first week that I wrote this in my blurb here in Lineup HQ. This is the first week I'm actually playing Tony Pollard. I have not been playing him through this disaster of a stretch of a season for Tony Pollard. But we finally have the time where he's not mega chalk. Not going to be 2%, but this is the first time where this underpriced, air quotes, Tony Pollard is not going to be mega chalk, at least on DraftKings. And so when people finally get off of that, right? Once everybody's finally fed up, right? Everybody was finally fed up with Kyle Pitts. And I'm like, okay, if you're done, I'm still in. I'm back in, right? But if you're buying it, I want to sell it. If you're selling it, I want to buy it. And so that's how I feel about Tony Pollard today. That being said, like that doesn't mean don't play Dak stacks. Like I think if you're MMEing and you don't have any Dak CD stacks, I think you're probably doing it wrong. So moral of the story being Dallas is a priority offense, I think, for me, and I am playing some Tony Pollard on your Dak stacks or Pollard or whatever. Are you playing any Cowboys defense with Tony Pollard, and are you bringing it back with any Panthers, say an Adam Thielen or something on your Dak stacks?
Definitely not bringing it back with any Panthers. I can confirm that. There's no Panthers in my pool. The only one who I'd ever consider playing would be Adam Thielen, and he is too expensive. And so I'm out on them. I would be pairing Dallas defense with Pollard if we would have gotten Rico Dowdle out. Because then I think Pollard still gets those blowout touches. But with Dowdle healthy, I think it'll probably be him. And so I'm gonna be out on that pairing. I would like it a lot better if he was the only healthy guy, but since he's not, I think I would just rather Pollard on his own.
Definitely a fair point from Gator Nation. I will say I don't consume a ton of DFS content. I wouldn't say that every show is pushing him. I've heard multiple shows being like, oh, those idiots are going to play Pollard again. There's definitely both sides to this. So I am interested to see what his ownership comes in at. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he came in higher owned than projected. A guy who was the same price as him on a team that we haven't talked about yet that we probably should spend a little time talking about. The Miami Dolphins play today against the Las Vegas Raiders, who are not good. I know they just beat both of the New York teams the last 2 weeks, but shocker, I don't think that means that Antonio Pierce is going to lead this team to the playoffs. The Dolphins should probably name their score here in this one. We talked a little bit about Tyreek being kind of a priority, one of the priority spend ups, but it's really interesting to me that over here on DraftKings, I go to the flex position, I sort by projected ownership. The Dolphins are probably the best bet, them and the Cowboys, to score just an absolute boatload of points today. And one player is above 7%, and it's Tyreek Hill. I know Devin Achane is back, and there's some uncertainty around him. But, man, at this ownership, I really want to dive into some of these Dolphins players. If no one is playing Waddle and no one is playing Achane, they feel like pretty good tournament plays to me. What do you think about the Dolphins?
So I brought up earlier, I talked about Cooper Kupp as like one of my favorite tournament pivots today. I think there's one other player I would put there up with him that I think is just phenomenal in tournaments, and it's Jalen Waddle at a similar price tag. So, like on FanDuel, he's closer to just like optimal because he's cheaper and he's going to be picking up ownership. But on DraftKings, he's going to be low owned, and I have some lineups where like my cash lineup today, it's a Kyler Murray team. It's got Tyreek Hill in it. I did a single entry where I pivoted off of it and basically just paid up for I got Marquise Brown on that team too to make it a full stack, and then I paid down from Tyreek Hill to Jalen Waddle as my one Dolphin to get a little bit different on it. I didn't set a rule. I didn't set a rule, but I think I would like close to like a Dolphin per team. If I was hand building, I feel like I'd want either Hill or Waddle or Devin Achane or Raheem Mostert.
Yeah.
Because doesn't this just feel like a game like earlier in the season where it's like, do we play Achane? I don't know. And Mostert's going to have like 60 yards and 3 touchdowns. So I'm getting to some Raheem Mostert in tournaments as well, but I like Devin Achane. I like Raheem Mostert. I like Tyreek Hill. He's, I think, the best spend up on the slate for a raw points perspective.
Yeah.
And I like Jalen Waddle as a pivot.
I agree. I don't think it's crazy to say, so we're starting to build your teams for you. We're jamming Tank and Singletary and Hollywood and Rondale and McBride, but we also think you need to play a Dolphin, and you need to play a Commander, and you're like, okay, there's 7 of my 8 roster spots, but that's how I feel about this slate. My take on the Dolphins is I agree. I think if I were I am hand building. I would probably try. It's not just like, are the Dolphins going to score a bunch of points? Do you have to have a guy? It's partially that, but I'm sorted by projected ownership here. And there's one player above 7% on a team that's going to score like 50 points. The Raiders defense is putrid. I understand they haven't gotten lit up in the last few weeks. That's what happens when you play Zach Wilson and Tommy DeVito. This is not Zach Wilson and Tommy DeVito. This is the polar opposite of that. And so the Dolphins are absolutely a priority for me, not just because they're going to score, but because no one is playing these guys. No one is playing Jalen Waddle on DraftKings, right? Which in turn, then Tyreek Hill on FanDuel, right? If they're going to play Waddle on FanDuel, like Tyreek Hill on FanDuel looks good. I could see both running backs. My preference is Achane. I know he's a little bit higher owned than Mostert, and I understand he takes a leap of faith. But it's a month ago, Mike McDaniel came back and said, he's on IR, but we expect as soon as he's ready, he'll be good. They were basically just being overly cautious with Achane, and they had no real reason to not be cautious with him. I believe he is still the highest points per game fantasy running back that in the league, despite the fact he hasn't played in such a long.
And he has more like explosive plays than any other player in the league.
And Mostert is second. Yeah, and he has the most plays of 10 or more yards in the entire NFL. He hasn't played in a month, and his teammate is second.
What's wild is legitimately, not even an exaggeration, the Miami Dolphins could put out an Olympic 4x1 team. Olympic, not just very good, but better than probably half the countries in the world.
100%. They have all the time. If you go look at I'm sure if you watch that game today, the graphic will get posted at some point. That is the next gen stats recorded sprint speeds in all of the game. It is only Dolphins, and Jalen Waddle can't even make the list. Jalen Waddle runs like a 4.340, and he can't even sniff those other guys because Mostert, Achane, and Tyreek are so fast that Mostert can't even that Waddle can't even get up there. But my to put a bow on the Dolphins, my take is actually that I think we should take that leap of faith with Achane. I'll take it even one step further, that the Dolphins defense is my favorite defense on the entire slate. And I really like the Achane and Dolphins defense pairing. Mostert has been kind of, taking a little bit more volume while Achane has been out. I know, Ahmed and Jeff Wilson is inactive, by the way. So he's not going to take any touches, but Ahmed has been, mixing in or whatever. I think this is the week where they're like, buddy, HN, second half, all you, right? Dolphins defense is gonna feast. Mostert has been like totally not 100% for the last little stretch. He was supposedly still a little bit banged up this week, even coming off the bye. And so I just think that this will be one of those HN games. And like, so I get the volume projection wrong on HN, right? He gets 12 touches instead of 18. Like he was scoring 30 fantasy points on like 10 touches. Like I want to play the guys that I can be wrong about their volume and they can still get there, as opposed to like I'd like Singletary. I'm probably playing Singletary, but like if I'm wrong about Singletary's volume, he is not a good play, right? You have to nail that volume. Whereas HN, like I don't have to nail the volume. He can still score 2 long touchdowns, and those are the kind of guys I really like at low ownership in tournaments.
Yep, I could not agree more. And it's like somebody asking in chat, like if I'm doing a large field tournament, who's the better play, Achane or Tony Pollard? I think personally, if I have a super crazy lineup everywhere else, maybe I go Pollard. But if I'm playing my Arizona and my Houston like I want to, it's definitely Devin Achane for me, because I totally understand the thought process of like, he doesn't get volume equals money and he doesn't get that many touches. He's not on the field as much as the other running backs, blah, blah, blah. But if he was just listed as a wide receiver instead, we would be playing him at 6,600 or 8K on FanDuel, whatever it is, every single week for 10 touches. We would say that's the best play on the slate. So I don't really care. It's like when he's getting 3, 4, 5 targets a game when he's healthy anyways. So when you're that fast, like this just kind of feels like early Tyreek Hill, where people would be like, there's no way Tyreek Hill can keep doing this. And then he just runs by everybody on the field because he's way faster than them. And so that's something I plan on. I'm going to be overweight on the field. He's projected for about 5% ownership. I'm going to have about 15 to 20. I
love it. Achane is definitely going to be he can't keep getting away with this meme a little bit later today. Like a friendly reminder in what I perceive to be a pretty similar spot earlier this year against the Denver Broncos. He scored 54 DraftKings points. 54, right? He had 18 carries and 4 catches. So that's 22 touches, right? The next week he had 8 carries and 3 catches. He scored 30 fantasy points on 11 touches. The guy is like, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but that's the kind of upside we're talking about, right? If you get 11 touches, you still might get a tournament winning score. If you get 20, he's going to break the slate, like not even going to be close. So we will, I'm going to bet that he regresses and doesn't keep ripping off 50-yard TD runs for the rest of his career. I don't care about the rest of his career. I care that he's 4% owned today, and they're going to score a bunch of points. I don't really care how it happens.
I will bet on it's like you said, I'll bet on that regression sorry to cut you off, but I just agreed with you so thoroughly. I'll bet on that regression when he's 30% owned. Anybody who is 5% owned and can rip off 50-yard touchdowns because they're the fastest player in the league, sign me up. Doesn't matter what their name is. If you run a 4.2 40, whatever it is with Devin Achane, if you run a sub 4.3 40 and you're going to be 5% owned and you are going to get 10 touches, I'm in.
I totally agree. All right. We got just a handful of minutes left here. A couple of quick games I want to hit super quickly, and then I want to hit you guys questions here in the chat. I believe it was Tim on the show right before us was talking up Chargers Packers, and that's a game I can't really wrap my brain around because everybody feels appealing and yet everybody feels like I'm struggling to click them in. But the Chargers have basically 2 guys, Austin Eckler and Keenan Allen. That seems pretty good. The Packers defense stinks. The Chargers defense stinks. The Packers have ramped up Aaron Jones a little bit, and Christian Watson is apparently never going to score fantasy points, but he's also very cheap. What do you think about Chargers Packers?
So for what it's worth, I think the Chargers have the second best tight end on the slate on their team. I think Donald
great
Parham
call.
For nice and cheap.
I forgot about Everett.
Yeah, and so I think Donald Parham, nice and cheap. That news came earlier in the week, and he's going super low owned on both sites today. We're projecting him for sub 2% on DraftKings. Let's see what his price is here on FanDuel. If he gives us some nice savings, 5,100. I hoped he'd be cheaper, but he's projecting for less than 1% ownership on FanDuel. So I think he is a phenomenal tournament play. He could have 4 targets and 2 touchdowns. Herbert always likes targeting him in the end zone, even if Everett's healthy, and now Everett's out, so he should get some more routes. So that's my favorite way to get a piece of this game, but I do like Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler too. I have a few stacks that have Justin Herbert, Keenan Allen, Quentin Johnston, and Donald Parham, the 3-man stack there, just in case Herbert goes off. I'm always more likely to make sure I have at least like a full 3 pass catchers when I'm playing an expensive quarterback. Like, say if this Mahomes versus Hurts game was on the main slate, if I was playing Patrick Mahomes against that pass funnel defense for the Eagles, I would be every single Mahomes lineup would have 3 of his different receivers on it because he's expensive and he would need 4 or 5 touchdowns to pay off that price tag and be optimal. It's kind of how I feel about Herbert tonight. So I'm not playing just Herbert with Allen, even though Allen's the type of guy who can have the volume that maybe that would work on a day like today. But I'm doing Allen, Parham, and Quentin Johnson because they're super duper cheap when I'm playing my Herbert. And then just like to get a piece of the Chargers offense, Donald Parham would be my favorite. I am getting to a decent amount of Aaron Jones. I'll probably be like around even on the field, 15 to 20%, but I'm not playing any Jordan Love at all. I just think he's not good. I like the Chargers defense actually as well, because even though they give up points, they usually still get a lot of sacks and turnovers too. They're like high risk, high reward here because they're always flying around. And so sometimes they get beat on big plays and then other times they make a big play. So I don't mind the Chargers defense, but I'm not the only player on the Chargers offense I'm getting to is Aaron Jones, except for I think I made one team that's a Herbert stack that is with 3 of those pass catchers, like I said. So I ran it back with Aaron Jones and Jaden Reed because he's playing some limited snaps, but heavily targeted when he's out there. Very valuable snaps.
Let's hit a few questions before. I know we didn't talk about Jacksonville and Tennessee. We did touch on Zay Jones a little bit. I think, of course, the slate is really wide open. And I think some of these are a little bit more one-off plays, but DeAndre Hopkins looks pretty good. Ridley, Kirk, Zay Jones look very much in play for tournaments for me. And we didn't talk about the 49ers. I'm going to leave that to mostly to the crunch time folks, but I think Purdy and all those pass catchers look good. We talked about Christian McCaffrey. Purdy, to me, is one of the best quarterback plays on the slate. You don't have to run it back if you don't want to, but Mike Evans is on the other side if you really feel the need. Just wanted to make sure we mentioned them so folks didn't say if I happen to play a 49er, right? And they say you didn't even mention Brock Purdy or whatever.
That's why we're talking at McCaffrey though too, right? Because Brock Purdy is the highest projected owned quarterback on the slate on DraftKings, or he's dipped a little bit. Murray and Stroud are up there with them, but then he's number 2 on FanDuel. So I think that's kind of why the big thing was like would just rather for GPPs the McCaffrey pivot.
Yep, I agree. No love for Love. Yeah, I think he just falls through the cracks. There's too many good quarterback plays today. All right, keep your questions coming. We're bringing in the crunch time folks here. But before we do a quick roundtable, I always got to ask. I've been asking Squirrel. I know Squirrel's hot take today would be like DTR is somehow gonna score 30 fantasy points or whatever. So you have a high bar, TJ. What is the tournament take, the final pound the table tournament take that we got to play in tournaments today to win all the money?
I think it has to be a full game stack of the Cardinals in Houston, not just a couple of these chalky pieces, but we are playing the entire game. So where I'm running out Kyler Murray with Rondale Moore, Trey McBride, Marquise Brown, Tank Dell, Devin Singletary, all in the same lineup. And hell, maybe I'll put in a Dalton Schultz or a Nico Collins or a Robert Woods there too. And I'm going to play it to fully explode. From that game, my kind of hot take is it's not hot that this player does well because he's cheap and he's somewhat chalky, but I think Rondale Moore will have double-digit catches today, over 10 catches. That's my hot take.
I like it. I am going to go with our boy, Devin Achane. The time off, don't worry. He's fine. He's still really fast. The Dolphins are still really good on offense, and the Raiders still really, really stink on defense. Achane is going to have another one of those big games. People are going to be posting the memes on Twitter like he can't keep getting away with this when he runs another 60-yard touchdown. But it's happening. Devin Achane with another big game. we will get ready here to pass it off to the crunch time folks. But first, Kristi, I think it's been a couple of weeks. How are you feeling? How's this slate treating you?
You know what? Good. It's good to see you guys too. It has been a couple of weeks, and I listened to most of your show. Great show, by the way, too. We're on a lot of the same calls, so
I don't know if that's good. I don't know if that's good.
I like it.
Brit, how's it going?
It's going good. So usually as for the hot takes, I got a couple for you. Without doubt,
Yes.
the GPP shipper of the day, I literally can't believe the projected ownership on him, is Keenan Allen. Who else are they going to throw the ball to today? This is the most obvious play I think I've seen this entire season looking at ownership.
I like it.
And the pick of the day is the Commanders at 8.5. Literally ridiculous. They're not like -12 against the Giants.
Oh, baby. We're laying all the points with Sam Howell. This is going to be a good day. Andre, what's going on? What's your hot take for today?
Honestly, I don't know. I have a lot of different directions I think could go in. I really kind of interested in Trevor Lawrence a lot more than I think most people are. I kind of think that he can honestly win you a tournament today, and I don't think you should overlook him today on the slate, especially now that we got Zay Jones playing as well too. So the pass catcher helps him out. So I kind of like Trevor Lawrence with Ridley, Ingram, the whole crew except for Etienne, but Etienne still catches passes out the backfield, so that helps him out a little bit.
That's a good one. We didn't even get to touch on the Jags much, and I think unowned Jag stacks that's really cheap. Seems pretty good to me. Thanks for hanging out with us, guys. I will be back next week. I think Squirrel is back unless he wins all the money again. I don't know. Who knows what's going on with him? These three fine folks will get you guys taken care of up to lock. If we miss your questions, they got you. We'll see you next week. Peace.
All right, let's keep the good times rolling. Kristi, welcome to the show. Like Erik said, it's been a couple of weeks. Andre, we've been doing this for a little while so far this weekend. Yeah, Kristi, how's your overall day going? Just fun to have you back on the show here.
Absolutely. Good to see both of you guys, and congrats, Andre, too. I think, did you recently get
Oh,
married?
yeah. I forgot about that. Welcome to the club, Andre.
That's awesome.
Yes, I did. Thank you. I appreciate it a lot.
Absolutely.
Do you have 300 entries today, Andre, or just one?
I have about in between, about 75 today. So
good joke. Yeah, Andre, how was the wedding, by the way?
It was pretty good. Thrown together the last 2 weeks, but honestly, put it together, came out really well. Happy with it. Happy wife, so happy life, and already getting adjusted to it, and just excited for the next steps.
Yeah, you know what would make her happier? Winning another $1 million. So let's try to get us to do it, and maybe one of the viewers as well. So let's jump right into position by position. I want to talk quarterback first for my game from a cash perspective. The two sites. So there's basically 3 guys on FanDuel, 2 guys on DraftKings I have interest in today. 3 guys on FanDuel are Justin Fields, Brock Purdy, and Kyler Murray. They're 7,400, 7,500, 7,600. Take your pick of whatever salary. I think Purdy's my favorite in there. I expect him 3 touchdowns, close to 300 yards passing today. You get a little more upside in the rushing with Murray and Fields. Take your pick of one of those. And on DraftKings, it's either Kyler Murray or it's Brock Purdy for me. Both of them way too cheap. And the reasonably priced quarterbacks for cash, to me, seem like the way to go for tournaments. Andre, I want to start with you. You said you're mixing it up a little bit differently today. You mentioned the Jaguars a little at the Open. What else are we doing from a tournament perspective today?
Quarterback-wise, I definitely think you have to get in a couple other guys besides Trevor Lawrence. I do like Justin Fields a good amount here. As I also do like Jared Goff a lot here as well too. I've been looking at like some stats recently, as I do probably like every week. For the most part, but like I know this says Chicago gives up has given up I think 7 top 12 QB QB number top 12 QBs overall. So to me, I think that matters a lot. I think that Jared Goff could still have a good game here, even though a lot of people are a little bit they like him, but I feel like the public's a little bit down on him and want to go more towards the CJ Stroud Kyler Murray game, which I actually love that game a lot too as well. And I also do like Brock Purdy a good amount too, just because of the receivers. I think provide more of an excellent matchup for them. But the thing about it is we know he's gotten there by himself, but how much do they really need him? That's what I want to see. And also, this is kind of a revenge game for Christian McCaffrey. So I think we could see him getting a lot of the touches too here. But like I said, the Trevor Lawrence thing, I think, really also stood out to me as well a lot here, with Tennessee having a little bit of a weak passing defense. So I think that they can definitely exploit that here a lot. So I think he's going to go, I think, more of a look than most of these quarterbacks. So I think he definitely has a lot of upside here where he can still put a lot of points. And also the run backs are good with Derrick Henry, who we haven't really spoken about much lately. But this also is a good matchup for him too, on the running back end too.
Kristi, what are your overall takes? I think I agree. Lawrence, if this isn't a spot where he has a ceiling game, I don't know if Trevor Lawrence is going to have many ceiling games. This one looks like a reasonably good spot for him. What are you doing today? The talk of the town is this Arizona-Houston game. It's indoors. You got Kyler Murray coming back. He looked pretty good, was running around, was fast. They're down Michael Wilson, so a more theoretically condensed target tree today. Everything's pointing to that game. How are you handling that? And then what else are you doing today?
Yep, I do. I do love Kyler Murray, and I know TJ even talked about it earlier on the last show, just stacking that game up because, Rondale Moore obviously makes a great play with Wilson out, should get a ton of targets. So the upside is there for Kyler. The rushing upside is there. So definitely have interest. I wrote up Justin Fields as one of my top plays. I think he's a great cash game play and GPP play this week. I just think, both he and DJ Moore are a couple of my favorite targets. I saw a stat somewhere too that I think last year Fields was averaging 11.5 rushing attempts for 139 yards and a touchdown per game against the Lions. So he should bode very well there. One of my top plays. And then the other guy that I wrote up this week is Tua. Obviously going back to that Miami game, and we have him right now at 5-6% ownership. I think he goes a little overlooked, and I love stacking that up. I mean, Tyreek, Waddle, Shane, getting some of those guys in there and just kind of stacking it up. They're highest total on the slate. I think it's just a great GPP play. So those are three that I like a lot. I'm also throwing Dak Prescott in the mix too. I mean, he's just been smashing. Pollard is checking in, and we'll get to that in the running backs. I mean, I think he's going to be a little bit more popular. He's in a very smash spot. He's disappointed us all year. But I like going Dak and CeeDee Lamb again, and, getting them at lower ownership in tournaments has just been a recipe for success. Think they go overlooked. So that's someone I have a lot of interest in. And then the last one I'll just mention too, going back to that Bears-Detroit game, I think going Jared Goff and getting, some of the pieces of Amon-Ra St. Brown. Trey McBride is going to be extremely popular at tight end. So getting Sam Laporta in there, I think, is a great GPP play. And then even, Gibbs and Montgomery, if they get a lead, I think that's great for Montgomery going against his old team. Gibbs has, shown that he can really smash when given the opportunity too. So those are probably the top guys that I'm kind of looking at in cash and GPPs this week.
All right, let's go to anyone like a sub 2% owned quarterback. We see Jordan Love, Josh Allen's not really getting anything. I do like Justin Herbert. It's so obvious to stack him with Keenan Allen or Austin Eckler today. You have a favorite, Kristi, of the really low owned quarterbacks today?
Yeah, I like your Herbert call a lot. And that was actually someone too, when I saw, the numbers on Keenan Allen and Eckler and pieces of that game coming in so low owned, that probably is my favorite low owned play. And no one's going to pay up for him either. So I like that call a lot.
All right, let's go to running back. We've got Devin Singletary, the highest yardage prop on the week, right? What were the odds at the start of the season on week 11? Devin Singletary, the highest yardage prop, probably plus 300,000. I mean, you could have made a lot of money if you bet on that. What are we doing with him in tournaments? Cash game, I think every site you're probably playing him locked in for an absolutely huge role against a team that can't stop the run. Andre, I'll go to you first. Strictly on Devin Singletary, highest ownership. Are you over, under at the field? What are you doing?
I'm currently at the field with it, just because there's a lot of ways you can attack with Houston here against Arizona. So I understand the passing attack has been, the passing defense for Arizona has been a little bit better, but Singletary also has been great too. So I'm going to be probably, like I said, at the field, maybe a little bit above, Because I'm just a couple of the running backs here that I do want to get to that I think are going a little bit overlooked here, and I think that they still can produce here in the spots.
And then Kristi, Devin Singletary, over, under. And then after that, I got maybe a cash question for you because you'll dice it up in cash with me once in a while on this Arizona-Houston game. So let's get to Singletary first.
Yeah, for Singletary, I'm actually over. I'm probably, more in that 40 to 50% range. I just think he's in a great spot, especially on DraftKings. That price is just too good. Getting the carries and just really like that game environment. So it's over the ownership for me this week on Singletary.
Yeah, you can, in tournaments, you can be overweight the highest owned running back. It doesn't just be a little different elsewhere. And I want to ask you too for cash, right? If we're playing Kyler Murray, Devin Singletary, we've got Marquise Brown, we've got Rondale Moore, we've got Trey McBride. Is this too much for like all of them in a single cash line? Because I think we're going to see, at least on DraftKings specifically, there's going to be a lot of teams in cash with all of those guys. If you had to take one out, maybe to me, it just seems like it's too much to concentrate on any single game for cash. And I know the salary and everything works. What's your overall take on that?
Yeah, no, I get your point because there's a lot of plays on the cash, especially for DK. A guy that I may be taking out a little bit more is Marquise Brown. Not that I don't like him, but I also like DJ Moore right at that same price point too.
Are you looking at my screen? My other screen, not the screen, the other one.
No, I absolutely love DJ Moore. And I mean, he averages 10 more fantasy points with Fields in the lineup. So I just really like him as that pivot point today. I think you got to play Rondale Moore. I mean, he's just way too cheap. I'm locking him in today. But yeah, that's one place that I'm getting a little bit different.
I that's the exact swap I've made for my personal DraftKings cash team. Andre, back to running backs. We've handled Singletary. What else are we doing? Right, just another. I mean, is everybody playing every running back, every player from this Arizona game? This game's going to get overly chalky. Connor coming in as the second highest owned projected on DraftKings. I think I prefer Brian Robinson to him straight up, who's pretty much basically right behind him. I expect Robinson to get some passing game work along with a plethora of rushes today against the Giants. What else are we doing here at running back?
Yeah, I don't know if I want to go with Brian Robinson today. I understand. I don't get why everyone's on him a lot today. Like the Giants actually do have. I understand the Giants' defense, but they actually do have a pretty good defense. Yeah, they give up again 9 finishes.
They've given up 6 rush touchdowns in the last 2 games, Andre.
I get that, and I completely understand that, but it's a divisional game. Divisional games are also very tricky, in my opinion. I've always had this mindset when it comes to divisional games.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't get overzealous on playing a guy like Brian Robinson, especially when he only gets how many rushing attempts has he gotten over the past few games? My thing is just spinning and not coming up with it right now.
It's not a ton, but I'll trade with
I feel like it's
out. I'll trade rushes for some receptions, and I think those are on the palette today.
Yeah, he got 18. Like last time he played the Giants, he had 8 rushing attempts. Granted, he scored a touchdown too in that game, but I think that I think there's also a different quarterback here too as well. So Brian Robinson is in a good position. I just don't think he is honestly someone I want to be overexposed to. I think being at the field, not below it personally, is my way to go. I like these other guys. I know the price point is also really good too. James Conner's cheaper. I like Jerome Ford as well. I do like Aaron Jones, who's a little bit more expensive in a great matchup against the Chargers, who are not that great against the run. Derrick Henry, who's also going to be like hardly owned at all. I think he's a good tournament play, especially in large fields to go for $1 million here. Breece Hall, I think they're going to try to feed him a little bit more here in this matchup too. Obviously, we got Tony Pollard, who at 6.6K should honestly go off in this spot. I think he will. And if you continue to going up, there's other guys. David Montgomery is not going to get much play in his first game back. I think he is going to still get a good amount of work, even though it's going to be split. But I can see that game being also really high scoring as opposed to this Washington Giants game. I don't see a way where it is going to be that high scoring, so I'm not going to be on Brian Robinson as much.
David Montgomery, sub 1%. I mean, I know it's like the Bears have a run defense, but that's ridiculous if that's what the field ends up doing. He should not ever be sub 1% with his touchdown potential. So that's a really nice call. Kristi, what do you think of the Jets? They made this statement they're going to try to get some of their younger guys some work today. Is that trying to inject some juice into the team? Are they talent scouting? We saw them get rid of Michael Carter. They want to get their draft pick some work, and basically across a lot of positions, it looks like they're going to try to do that today. What does that mean to you? Is there anything we can glean into that from a fantasy perspective?
I do like Breece Hall a ton. I just think, yeah, like you said, Michael Carter's now gone. Breece has immense upside. He's kind of right in that mid-tier price range, priced very closely to guys like Aaron Jones, Josh Jacobs, Tony Pollard. So I think, we have him at 14% ownership. I think that's a really nice GPP play. I do like him. Both he and Garrett Wilson on the receiving side, I think, yeah, they're really interesting plays, and I've seen them popped a little bit in some of the optimal lineups earlier. Other guys that I really like this week, obviously we talked about Singletary, we talked about Robinson, like both of those guys. I also like paying up for Christian McCaffrey. Yep. I just think he's an awesome spend up. And so he's a guy that I know, over on DraftKings for sure. Have 5 lineups over there. I've got him in a couple. I just think.
Do you have a high-priced wide receiver paired with him? Because I'm finding you're sort of sacrificing. You can only do one. What do those lineups look like? And would you prefer to have CMC or pick your one of the 3 or 4 high-priced wide receivers?
Yep. In those lineups, I've had to sacrifice. So I might have a Tyreek Hill and one of the other ones that I don't have CMC in. So I have had to sacrifice a little bit there, but there are some good receivers. I think that, we mentioned DJ Moore already, but when we get to receivers, I think there's a few in there that you can get a little bit different than the field. But I like going overweight on McCaffrey. I don't think he should be, 12% owned in this game. And we have a lot of interest in that San Francisco game. So like him a lot. Tony Pollard, I think, is the guy that has been super tough. I know I've played him a lot the last few weeks, thinking he's in great matchups, and I am going back to him this week. It's a fantastic matchup. We've heard CeeDee Lamb and the team really talk about getting him involved, and if he doesn't get it done this week, might be time to pull the plug. But his price is certainly accounted for that now on both sites. He's under 7K, could easily be a 2-3 touchdown game. So I am going back to him. I do like Aaron Jones quite a bit too. I just think in that game environment, I think he's one of the better plays. I believe I tagged him this week as well. So I think he's in a nice spot. Other guys that I'm kind of looking at, we mentioned James Conner too. I think that's a really great play. And then the David Montgomery, I like that a lot. I know you talked about him, Andre, too. Yeah, he should never be that low owned, and he's going against his old team. Not that it's nice to have the revenge factor. However, if they get up, I could see them feeding the ball to Montgomery. I could see him, both he and Gibbs getting involved.
He gave the touchdown to Gibbs last week. Gibbs is going to give him the touchdown against his old team this week, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then, really a guy I like a lot is a Shane in that Miami offense. I mean, he just keeps getting it done. It's his first game back, 5% ownership. I mean, I like pairing him.
He'll be higher than that for the casual. I think even some sharp players are going to be.
Absolutely. But I really like pairing him with the Miami defense, because Washington defense is extremely popular. Will be one of the more popular defenses this week. And I like going the Miami route and getting a Shane and or Mostert in there too for some tournaments.
Yeah, I think you can definitely get different. I mean, between a Shane Barkley, even James Cook, Kenneth Walker, Jalen Warren is cheap enough. Derrick Henry, 6,300 against Jacksonville. I know Andre talked to him. These guys are low owned. You can mix one of those in to some of your chalkier teams and certainly get up there. And at least for cash, I just wanted to mention a couple players on the radar for me on both sites. Devin Singletary. I do like Brian Robinson. I think a little bit more on FanDuel. You've got I like ETN. I like Christian McCaffrey. We didn't even really talk ETN. Bad week last week against the 49ers. I know the Titans, in theory, have a good run defense, but with the game script more in his favor, basically getting every touch, I think ETN is a very, very nice play this week. Anything else at running back, guys, or you want to move to wide receiver, where I think there's just some absolutely egregious tournament ownership this week?
Absolutely. Yeah, let's do it. Let's hit the receivers.
All right, so I mentioned at the top, I have one tournament team that has Keenan Allen. But Keenan Allen is by far the absolute most ridiculous. If he comes in at, we have him at 3.5% on DraftKings in the latest run. I can refresh that. But if he's even sub 5% on, there's literally no one else for them to throw the ball to. And we sort of saw this last week. And I think he's still catching targets from last week. Let me see. No, we haven't updated anything. I think he had 14 targets and 11 receptions for 175 yards and 2 touchdowns. This was the last game, and nobody wants to play him. This is the most insane thing I've ever seen. They're down another wide receiver. I think him, along with the tight end Donald Parham, are 2 of the most egregious tournament ownerships I've seen this entire season. That said, I don't think I'm playing Keenan Allen in cash. There is risk with his shoulder injury, but I don't know. And he's expensive. But from a tournament perspective, I think he's close to not a must play, but double, triple, quadruple his ownership in MME. The guys for cash people are playing. At the top, you could entertain a Tyreek Hill, you can entertain an Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's basically them. Then you have you go to the 5K tier. You've got guys like Tank Dell, you've got Marquise Brown, and you've got DJ Moore. I think those are probably the 3 guys you're going to want to entertain. And on the cheap end, you've got Rondale Moore, even playable on FanDuel, in my opinion, at 4,900. So that's basically where your cash stable should be coming from. Kristi, let's go with you for wide receivers first. What are you doing at the top? You've got Tyreek Hill, maybe just from salary-wise. CeeDee Lamb. I mean, CeeDee Lamb's another guy, right? People are playing Pollard. We get to play Pollard on Thanksgiving, too, against Washington. So if it doesn't work this week, we can just say it's going to work. This will be the last week next week that we try to use them against Washington. But CeeDee, I mean, just putting up monster games. Keenan Allen, Amon-Ra, so consistent with some upside. How are you handling these big names?
Yeah, and there's a lot I have interest in. Tyreek, of course, I do. I love him. I think he is one of the better spend-ups, and he's a good cash game play. Just always gets it done. Great in cash and tournaments for sure. CeeDee Lamb, yes, I think in tournaments he's coming in at lower ownership than we expect, kind of like Keenan Allen a little bit, but he just keeps getting it done. Has just had 3 huge games in a row. So I'm definitely utilizing him in tournaments. Cooper Kupp is a guy that I really like over on FanDuel. They're about the same price on both sites this week. And to me, Cooper Kupp is, kind of your cash game play over there. He gets Matthew Stafford back this week. And I think we see, I think we see, the pairing that they had before and just putting up a lot of points. Then you've got the Houston side, just some great plays. Tank Dell coming in as one of the top plays. I will say what's interesting on the FanDuel site, Tank Dell, 7K. Nico Collins is only $200 more. I like going to Nico Collins in tournaments, because I think he's going to go overlooked. He's priced up about $1,000 or $800 more on DraftKings. So I think Tank Dell is definitely your cash play, but I like Nico Collins there for tournaments. I also like Jalen Waddle. I talked a lot about the Miami game, and in those games, I'm definitely stacking up Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, both getting those guys there. We talked about Rondale Moore. To me, he's just such a lock play today. I like him on both sites. Just think he makes a ton of sense. A couple tournament plays that I think are really interesting. DK Metcalf. He's, kind of in that Seattle Rams game, getting some Metcalf and Cup exposure, I think is really interesting for tournaments too. So I like that quite a bit. And then we kind of talked about, that Arizona game. And I do think for tournaments, just stacking that up and just getting a lot of pieces of that, getting different maybe with Nico Collins. We'll get to Trey McBride when we get to the tight ends, but just really like all those plays. And then, you've also got a guy too, Stephon Diggs, sitting right in the middle there at 4% ownership. He's going very, very overlooked. We all know the upside that he has. I know the Bills have been struggling big time lately, but still Stephon Diggs, and getting him at low ownership is something that I think we should consider in tournaments as well.
Yeah, Andre, what's your overall take of the wide receiver field?
Okay, well, I'm going to be well overexposed to Calvin Ridley. I think Calvin Ridley's an excellent player in the slate. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think, also is another one that we have to look out for as an excellent play. Nico Collins, I'm well over the field on him, obviously, with Tank Dell and as well as Robert Woods. I do like DJ Moore a good amount, too. I don't want to forget about Terry McLaurin too. I think that he's in a fine spot. I think we can look at him today as well. You mentioned Keenan Allen before. I'm trying to get as much over the field as I possibly can with him, but I will also run it back on the other side with Jaden Reed here. So just have a little mini game stack with those two guys. So I would try to do that as much as I possibly can. I like Christian Kirk as well. D-Hop is another good option here. I do like Tyreek and Waddle, but I'm not getting as much of them just because I'm focusing more on just certain games and just trying to build around them. So just go with those other guys a lot more than as opposed to the field that I could get a little bit more of exposure to, and also in a better game environment.
All right, Andre, I'm going to come at you with some low-owned wide receivers in just a second. But first, I got to tell everyone about FanDuel. Thank you to them for sponsoring the show. It's presented by FanDuel. Bet $5 on any money line. You get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins for new users in Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, and Wyoming. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21. Gambling problem. Call 1-800-GAMBLER. I also want to tell you guys about the Sim Labs beta. We have it here on RotoGrinders. You can go to the Discord. There's a Sim Labs channel that's free. It's still free. You can check it out. It's a brand new product that generates DFS lineups through the power of simulation, combines data from every aspect of the slate to churn out lineups that match your preferences. In just a few clicks, you can have hundreds of well-built correlated lineups to go for whatever contest you're playing. Check it out in the link in our description for more information. So we got SimLabs and FanDuel. Also, my favorite bet of the week, FanDuel. Washington. I don't know if it's on FanDuel, but you can get them at 9 or 8.5. Like the Giants haven't scored a first half point in 2 games because they literally can't score unless the other team gives up, attempting to stop you from getting into the end zone. So the Giants should be at least 10-point underdogs to any team in the league, including Carolina or the Bears or whatever, let alone Washington, who actually has a very good offense. Defense is questionable, but really love the Commanders today. 8.5, 9. I'd take that up to 10. So low-owned wide receivers, Andre, always like to dig through here. Again, my personal favorite is Keenan Allen. Going to start at around like 7%, and I mean, it's just loaded today. We've got like a questionable Tyler Lockett. Maybe he's not 100%. DK Metcalf getting the rainbow here usually means he'll have some high ownership, but he's coming in at 6% like him. You mentioned Nico Collins. You mentioned Terry McLaurin. You can play Jahan Dotson. Mike Evans, he has like these massive spike week. Could he have 140 and 2 touchdowns? Absolutely. In garbage time here. Deontay struggled last week. It's against Cleveland. Probably not him. I mean, this is a week to include specifically at least one, if not 2 of these reasonably low-owned wide receivers that, like, even Quentin Johnson, sure, he stinks, but who else is there to throw the ball to? I mean, just a lot of these guys. Do you have a couple of favorites?
Out of those guys that you mentioned,
You can keep going. I mean, it's just
yeah.
it's loaded.
I mean, yeah, you can keep going. Like, I really do like Jaden Reed a lot. Like, this on the opposite side, just like that's the guy who's just standing out to me, who has a pretty good matchup against that defense here. And like you said, you can run it back with Keenan Allen on the opposite side. So to me, he's the one that's standing out to me a lot. I'm trying to get actually more exposure to as well. We should also sleep on Brandon Cooks here too as well.
Yep.
He was not in the bad. He was supposed to be in the bad matchup last week and still went off, had a great game. So he can do the same thing here in this spot. So I like him a good amount as well too. That we can use here on this slate at low ownership. The Rondale Moore thing I'm kind of iffy on. I like him, but I don't know how much exposure I want to get to him. I rather just target more so Marquise
Rondale
Brown.
to me is like he's a cash play.
Not
so much the tournament. He's going to get hot. He's going to get up there in tournaments for the price.
I think it was a price, but I don't know if the price point warrants it. I mean, he has to score a touchdown, and Granny pays it off. But I just overall as a take in general, I don't know how.
Yeah, I go to like a Reed, or there's a couple of Kyle Phillips. There's a bunch of whoever the third wide receiver for the Chargers is. I forget his name. I think he's 3K today. I mean, you can just mix in. There's other ways to not play Rondale Moore in tournaments. He's fine for cash, 6 for 45, get you there in cash today because I'll let you get everything else. But you need, especially if you're playing these large field tournaments, you're going to need like 16, 17 from a cheap guy to get there.
I don't mind Amari Cooper too as well today. I think he can have a pretty good game as well.
All right, Kristi, let's go to tight end. Everyone's playing Trey McBride, I think, for a pretty good reason. He's been getting there, but I don't know. Tournament ownership of 30% seems ridiculous, specifically when you have guys like Dalton Kincaid, Cole Kmet, Sam Laporta. Maybe I'm a little cooler on Evan Ingram with Zay Jones playing. You've got Kittle who can go berserk. Tyler Conklin has 13 straight catches over this past 2 games. You've got Donald Parham, who's he's could literally be the second or third target on most plays for the Chargers today. There's too many options for him to garner this much tournament ownership. I know definitely for cash, you're probably playing McBride. I could see you going to a Conklin to get a CMC and a Tyreek Hill. There's a lineup with that I almost played, but I'm not. I do like McBride for cash, but just in general, I think he's a little too highly owned at the tight end position.
I couldn't agree more. I love him. I really do. But there are some really neat tight end plays. And I actually think this is a week you could actually play 2 tight ends because, with McBride being so good, I love Cole Kmet. I mentioned liking Fields and more. And I like getting Kmet in there as well. Kincaid, ever since Knox has gone down, he's getting the targets. Love that a lot. And then Sam Laporta is a guy that I have a lot of interest in too. Both he and Kmet are probably 2 of my favorite tight end plays outside of McBride this week that I'm getting to. You mentioned Parham. Think he's a great play. Yeah, he's going to get some targets. No Jalen Guyton either this week. So, at a like you mentioned, you can maybe get CMC. You can maybe get Tyreek or CeeDee Lamb in your lineup because of that. So I think that's super interesting. Near min price for sure. I also like your Conklin call. I think that's a way to get different too. And nobody's going to pay up for George Kittle. He had a great week. We like that San Francisco offense, but I mean, if you really want to get different, there's a great way to do it. And he could easily, put up a big number for us too. So if getting a little bit different, I like that route as well.
Yeah. I mean, just Jake Ferguson, Tyler Conklin, Donald Parham. I mean, no one's playing these guys. You've got George Kittle, Kincaid. These guys will draw some ownership, but McBride is not 30% to be like you don't have to be the best scoring, but in theory, you can think of it that way when it's a singular position like tight end. There's no chance he's 30% to be the highest scoring tight end on the week. I would certainly be willing to mix it up in tournaments. Andre, how are you handling tight ends this week?
Tight end, we're gonna have a little bit more spread out. I like Parham, but I'm gonna be probably I'm gonna be overweight the field on him, but probably just a little bit slightly. But I do like Cole Kmet a lot. I like Logan Thomas a good amount too as well. Dalton Schultz, Laporta, guys that we all mentioned already. Pretty much is the guys I'm going to be targeting a lot here at tight end. I don't really have that many in my pool. I don't also want to forget about Jake Ferguson. I think you can play him if you're running a little bit of a deck stack. I think he is definitely a viable play today as well. I'm not as high on Evan Ingram as I once was before. Like you said, with Zay Jones coming back into play.
Yeah, Zay Jones, I know you like Ridley. I saw some stats being thrown around. Calvin Ridley has much better games with Zay Jones so far this year. It's a very limited sample. Take that for what it's worth, though. Don't be afraid to not click Trey McBride in tournaments. I do think McBride is the cash game play. All right, Kristi, defense. Let's mix it up before we get to questions. If you have questions, you can throw them in the RotoGrinders Discord under the live stream chat, or you can go to YouTube. I got to get YouTube up. I haven't been following it. I probably should have been doing that. But we'll get that running up and we'll get there. But defense, it looks like people are trying. We all paid up for the Cowboys last week and it backfired. You've got the Commanders sitting here at the highest projected ownership. You've got the Dolphins next, 3,200. I needed that 400 for cash. I'm on the Dolphins, big home favorites against the Raiders. What do you think of the Commanders? As long as it's like 20-0, they're just going to pound Saquon Barkley. And then, I think Erik was talking earlier show, you get a lot of safe, short passes. Hasn't really been a lot of mistakes, not a lot of time for sacks yet. Are they worth being the highest owned defense today?
Not for me. Anytime I see a defense that highly owned, I'm just not as interested. I had on FanDuel, I'll say 49ers defense just makes sense. They're way too cheap, and I'm just kind of taking it and running with it. I just really like that.
Yahoo too. I mean, who set the pricing on Yahoo for them at defense? That's the cash game defense on both.
It is, and I tagged him. I rarely tag a defense for FanDuel, but did that. You mentioned the Dolphins. That's where I'm getting different, and they're a little bit cheaper. Allows you to pay up at one of your other positions. Maybe get somebody a little bit different. I like that play a lot. I also think the Lions are interesting too. They're, I think they're in a good spot. They are expensive, but I just think it's a little bit way to get different. The Jets D, I think, is a great cheaper play just to throw in there. So there's someone that I definitely have interest in, kind of even pairing them with Breece Hall, a running back that I definitely like in tournaments. So yeah, for me on DraftKings, I'm really, looking to get away from the Commanders, going more Dolphins, and then, 49ers over on FanDuel.
Andre, what's a couple of defensive thoughts for you? Then we'll get to some questions.
I'm going to run a lot of the Jets defense here a lot today. Dolphins as well. I do like the Rams a little bit too. The Rams have been playing a lot better, so I'm gonna. They played the Seattle Seahawks well, I believe. So I'm gonna play them a good amount too. 49ers, you could definitely get to the if you can get there. I know they probably will cost a little bit more, but I think I would play them a good amount too. And I don't mind the Packers, just because I think that game can have a lot of back and forth. It could be a shootout, but the Packers also do have a good defense just to begin with overall. So I'm going to probably have the most exposure, I think, on this slate to the Packers, and probably Aaron Jones with as a correlation.
Yeah, Packers just super cheap, allow you to if you do them and you don't pay for McBride, you can get to the CMC Tyreek Hill type lineups on DraftKings. So that's probably one of the main ways people will be doing that today. All right, let's get some questions. Going to go to our Discord first in the live stream chat. Yup, that's me. Wanted to know DraftKings cash. Looks like this is defense and a flex. So Dallas defense and Tank, or Pittsburgh defense and Breece Hall. To me, this is really defense doesn't matter too much. Do you want Tank or Breece? Then would your defense matter more between those two?
I'd probably take Tank for cash. I just like him, but I think you could go either.
Yeah, and you're getting the Dallas defense. That one sounds like the way I would go. Mike wants to know, FanDuel cash, Brock or Murray? If I play Brock, he will be naked. So basically on FanDuel, there's the three quarterbacks, and I don't think you can go wrong with any of them. It's Fields, it's Murray, and it's Brock Purdy. If I had my personal choice, I will play Brock Purdy. I needed the $100 or $200. I'm going with Justin Fields on FanDuel. Personally, I would like to play Brock Purdy. You can play Kyler Murray. That's the salary tier I'm in. Does anyone have any disagreement on FanDuel for cash?
Nope, I have it really the same way. Yep.
If you had to play Brock or Kyler, who would it be today for you?
For me, I would probably go Kyler. I like what I've seen with him. I like the rushing upside there, so I would go Kyler. Yeah,
those are the three. I'm not sure you can really go wrong with any of those personally today. A single entry, FanDuel. Everyone's like Murray or Fields, right? So you got one in a tournament. So this is your specialty, Kristi, and I'll throw it to Andre too.
Yep.
I mean, Murray or Fields?
I'm going Fields this week. I like them both, and I have 5 lineups that I've built over there, and Fields is my main one this week, but Kyler's the second right behind him.
All right, Andre, I'm going to bring up FanDuel ownership real quick here. Let's see what we're looking at in terms of Kyler Murray and Justin Fields. We've got CJ Stroud somehow coming out top. Everyone's on that game. Purdy, Murray, Fields, they're all basically the same. If you had to pick which one, who you got?
Purdy, Murray, or Fields? In a FanDuel, I'm probably going to go Purdy.
All right. So, it's Murray or Fields. You got to pick one.
So it's Murray. So it's Murray or Fields. Then give me. I'm
taking Fields. I just think that Houston game is going to get just absolutely obliterated in terms of ownership and single entry. So give me the Justin Fields side.
Yep, for sure.
I agree. I agree just for low ownership purposes, but Murray looked so good last week. It's just hard to kind of not want to play him.
Yeah. Farrell wants to know, FanDuel cash. Kristi, favorite pay up in running back and wide receiver. What are we looking at in FanDuel?
I do like paying for receiver. I like paying up for Tyreek. If you get him, so that's my favorite. For running back, my favorite pay up, if I'm paying up, I actually like Austin Eckler. If you're paying up.
Yeah, I think FanDuel's a little tougher to get to the Christian McCaffrey tier than it is on DraftKings today. So I don't have. I'm in like the Brian Robinson, Devin Singletary tier on FanDuel like that.
Me too.
There's an Austin Eckler team I think you can get 2 for cash pretty reasonably, but getting to McCaffrey I think is a little more difficult on FanDuel today.
Yep.
Let's see. Any more questions? That's it from the Discord. Let's go to YouTube. We'll scroll back a little bit. Best player prop bet. Oh, let's see. So I love the look what I happen to have up on the screen. Now let's put the screen share back up. Let's see what I'm on. The prop model. If you need a subscription, the prop model in literally every sport, it is a printing press. I'm worried that I'm going to get banned from all of the sites soon because the prop model. I'm upping the bets on the prop model, and it's going ballistic. So a lot of these have changed. I like Bellinger over 14.5 receiving yards. Let's see here. I'm on Conklin. I'm on over 25.5 receiving yards. A couple of props. I got a Monday night prop. I'm really on Devontae Smith with Dallas Goedert out. His prop and to him 100. Those are probably the ones I'm on currently. Not too. I'm the spread guy on scores and odds, and some of the other guys are the props. I seem to be really good at spreads, and you generally don't have to be worried about being limited if you hammer the spreads. So that's sort of how I'm treating it right now. Let's see what else can we get from the YouTubes. FanDuel cash. This is from Kevin. Steelers or Niners D, same price. That's the 49ers, I believe, for everybody across the board. I could definitely see playing the Steelers against DTL.
Oh, yeah. I could too. I'd use those more for tournaments, but for cash, definitely 49ers. All
right. Back to YouTube. Kevin also wants to know FanDuel cash, Breece Pollard or Aaron Jones. So I am call me. I know people like Aaron. I'm a non-believer on all of those today. So I have none of them. I'm against the green on FanDuel. I am on Brian Robinson on FanDuel. I think I think he was plus money to get a touchdown. But that's ridiculous. You can go bet that. I'm on Brian Robinson in that tier. He's a little more expensive. I'm avoiding Aaron Jones. You want Aaron Jones in wins. He really does well in wins. So if you think the Packers win, maybe then you want to play Aaron Jones, but they're still giving A.J. Dillon the ball too much for my liking. I don't know. And then Pollard, I'm out. I'm out on Tony Pollard. I'm going to need to see it not 1, but 2 weeks, which means I need him this week and on Thursday. And then his schedule gets so tough. I don't know if I'm going to be playing Pollard. I'm out on Pollard. So I'm not the guy to ask on that. Kristi, who would you play in that tier?
Yeah, in that tier, I'm playing Brian Robinson. I like Pollard and Singletary are probably 3 of my top guys that I'm looking at. I am playing Pollard this week. Could come back to bite me, but I like the matchup and I'm giving him one more shot. So I'm in on that.
I understand that. And I don't think I'd fault, but I'm just personally, I've thrown it.
I get it.
Andre, what running back would you prefer from that tier?
You said Brian Robinson.
We got Breece, Pollard, or Aaron Jones.
Ooh, Aaron Jones.
All right. Here's another one from Rodney. This is like the tier I'm living in. Breece Hall, Brian Robinson, or Josh Jacobs. We didn't really talk about Josh Jacobs.
No.
I think he's interesting just because it's very clear, and we've even saw reports that there was even a report the players have taken over the Raiders, and the coaches they're just doing what the players want. And they're just going to get Josh Jacobs the ball. A little bit of a different script this week than what he's been faced in the previous weeks. But I still could see 15 minimum touches for Josh Jacobs today.
Mm-hmm.
Giving them through the air even better. If things go their way a little bit more than everyone expects, I mean, this could be 25 to 30 touches for Josh Jacobs. Very hard to not want to play him. And I like Brian Robinson as well. Give me 20 touches, maybe not 20, but 15 to 20 against a bad defense with very high touchdown upside. Those are the 2 I like. I'll take them both over Breece Hall today.
I completely agree. I love Brian Robinson. I ended up going back and tagging him on Saturday just with no Gibson. Just love that play. So yeah, he's my favorite as well.
Andre, what do you got in that little tier? Jacobs, Breece Hall, Brian Robinson.
Give me Jacobs, Breece Hall, Brian Robinson. Give me. Oh gosh, give me. I have to go Brian Robinson. I'm trying to avoid him, but you can't.
I'm on the. I don't know if I want to be on the Brian Robinson bandwagon today, but I am, especially on FanDuel. On DraftKings, I think you can avoid it if you want to. He is reasonably cheap, though. All right, couple more we got. Basically, 1 or 2 questions left. We're not really going to be able to get you too much here. So let's. Anyone have any sports bets? I know I did Mine, I'm on Washington. I gave you a couple of props. Andre, you got anything you're on today?
Nothing yet. I have to go research and do so.
You want the late game. So Seattle. So you got Conklin. 25 and a half yards, I think it was, or something ridiculous. You can do the 49ers. You do, I think I did this, McCaffrey to score, and then you do the halftime full time where they win the first half and then they win the game. I think comes close to around even money, which to me seems reasonably ridiculous for how big of a favorite they are for the late games. Kristi, you got anything you're on in the sports books?
I don't this week, but I really like your Washington call and your Conklin call that you had on there. I think those are really good ones as you pulled those up, but I don't have anything specific.
All right, I'm on the Vikings too. That's I think you can get them up to +3 now. I like them to straight up win. Who needs the points? And I think there was someone else on Scores and Odds that like them too. That's is that Sunday or Monday night? One of the two. I think it's tonight. Is that tonight? I don't know. It's all a blur when it's not on the main slate. I forget. It's one of them. The Vikings are another spread I'm on today. All right, I think that's going to do it for today. Good luck. May all your touchdowns. So the thing with NFL, they all score on the first drive, and then there's no more scoring for like the entire first half. So it's going to be a fun first drive. And I've seen a couple threads on this on Twitter too, where all these teams, they score and then they forget how to call plays, or either that or the defense adjusts really well. But yeah, the first couple of drives for each team are generally good. Then there's not much scoring, and then at the end of the game, you score a bunch of points too. So let's just hope it keeps going all game long. For Kristi and Andre, thanks for watching, everybody. I'm Brit, and we out ya.